And we are live, folks. Welcome to episode 3419 of the Survival Podcast. Today's episode, choosing a better diet for 2024. And this was totally unplanned, but I pinged Ken Berry this morning to ask him a question, and we started chatting by instant message because he was actually available by instant message for once, and decided, hey, why not have Ken on? So Ken, welcome to the show today, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to chat with you again, Jack. I'm actually streaming this on a couple of my platforms, and for my followers, Jack Spirko is one of the preeminent voices in being prepared, whether there's an ice storm and the power's out for 2 weeks, or there's a tornado, or there's a hurricane, or if something worse happens. This guy, I've been listening to this guy for 15 years easily about being prepared. And so if you're wondering who that scruffy looking guy is over on the other side of the screen, that's Jack Spirko. If you want to know how to prepare yourself and your family for the inevitable, it's going to happen. You're going to have a hurricane, a tornado, a power outage, water outage, something, or something worse, right? And I love Jack's common sense approach. If things get bad, you're going to be prepared. If they don't get bad, it's still going to be okay that you've got some stored food and stored water. It's not a big deal. It doesn't make you a kook. It makes you wise in the old sense of that word. You want to have a little wisdom. You need to be able to take care of your family for a week or two should something bad happen. So I love him as a source of information.
Well, thanks, Ken. And real quick before we start plowing into this, if y'all want to ask a question, know this. If you're on my YouTube or Ken's Facebook, I can see your questions in the back office. If you have a question for us, we'll handle that at the end unless something really speaks to us. Tom has given you the example here to follow. If you're in the live stream, he's got the word question and then in all caps, and then the words that follow it are the actual question. If you do that, I will star you and you will go into the special list, and we'll try to get back to you and follow this up. Though I know this will be a more popular stream because we got Ken's celebrity status with us today. And you are listening to an episode of the Survival Podcast. So if you're tuning in to see Ken because you're on Ken's channel, just know that I'm the goof in charge today, and that means I'm going to pimp something right out of the gate here because I need to get this done. I sat on my feet too long with this. For those that know what I do a lot of stuff in this world that we're talking about today, which is diet, but it's lifestyle design, it's homesteading, it's preparedness, like Ken said, etc. And I have a method of composting. We have a new composting course coming out, an online course. It's going to be $35 one time to take that course, totally worth it. But part of that is I want a video of actually one of my bioreactors being assembled. So the weekend of January 6th or 7th, I don't know which day we're going to do because we're going to stay flexible on this. I have a class going. It's $70 or $75. And so it really costs you about $35 because you get the online course for free as part of it. And it's going to be like a bonus we add to the course. Badass food, cool people to hang out with. I put it out Friday afternoon because we weren't sure on the dates. And so one person signed up. So if we don't get 5-6 people to sign up in the next couple of days, we'll probably push it further out. And we're staying flexible with the weather too, guys. This time of year in Texas, we can have Indian summer, and it can be gorgeous out like it is today, or it can be miserable. I don't want miserable students. So you can read the write-up. It's at the survivalpodcast.com. Scroll down, and let's get on into this topic with Ken. And again, I'm really grateful to have him with us today. Yeah, we're talking about choosing a diet for 2024. And I have provided Ken with my notes so he knows at least what we're talking about today. But I want to start out with how we're defining diet for this episode. I'm sure you deal with this all the time. I want to go on a diet to lose weight, right, Ken? And it's like, no. I'm defining diet is like the lion on the Serengeti has a diet that includes gemsbuck and antelope, right? Like, what is the normal thing that you eat on a daily basis without having to check a chart to see what you should be eating? Like, we're talking about a way of living, a lifestyle here.
Yeah, and that's the way the word diet is used in all the scientific literature. When you talk about a gorilla diet or you talk about any animal's diet, that means what they eat on a daily basis. Only in modern society where we've all become fat and pre-diabetic or diabetic do we use the word diet in its modern connotation. That's not the way the word diet is used scientifically. And it triggers people. They're like, well, I don't consider low carb or keto or carnivore a diet. And I'm like, well, you should, because that's what it is. But I get what they're saying. Mm-hmm. That's not the classical use of the word diet.
And then another thing I want to say this for Ken's benefit, because we're fixing to give some people emotional heart attacks here in a second. We're going to go through stages of adjusting that diet. And where we're going to start off is not keto, it's not carnivore, it's not even close. And that doesn't mean that Ken or I are saying this is what you should do. We're both adherents to what Ken calls proper human diet. I'm probably ketovore would be the best way to describe the way that I eat 99% of the time. Ken's probably more toward all the way carnivore. It's made amazing things happen in my life. I was just showing Ken from some pictures of me from 10 years ago. And he's like, I'd love to know what your fasting insulin was. I don't even know, but I can tell you that my A1C was up into like 6-ish, 6.2 at the worst I ever had. My last time I had labs done, my A1C was a 5.4.
Sweet.
So as we go into this, we're not saying, hey, you should quit ketovore or carnivore and go backwards. We're just saying there's a whole lot of people out there with a whole lot of problems. We're going to be talking about some of those problems here in a second, that I want you on an on-ramp somewhere to doing better. And then you might like what happens and you might do more. So that's how we're coming at this. And I also want to talk about something real quick here, and that's genetics. I think both of you and I are kind of like the whole eat right for your type is kind of bullshit, and that anybody will do well if they go all the way toward the proper human diet.
Yep.
But there is something to genetics. I remember at one of my workshops, you said, if Jack or I look at carbohydrates, we put weight on.
Yep.
Right? There is something in the genetics of this. And I don't think it's going to eat right for your type. I think it's that you have more tolerance for going the wrong direction depending on your genetics, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely documented in the literature. So 2/3 to 3/4 of the adult human population on the entire earth is lactose intolerant. And we talk about lactose intolerant as a disease, but it's not. It's actually the normal state for human beings. But at least 4, if not 5 different times in human evolution, we have developed something called lactase persistence, which enables us to tolerate lactose, the sugar in milk. And then we can actually use the milk as a food. And so that is genetic, right? And then also we have upregulated the amylase genes several different times in human evolution where we could actually break down starch. And some populations of humans have many more copies of those genes than others. And so some people can break down that starch much more readily than others can. Again, that's genetics. And I would opine that there are many other genetic variables that will ultimately help decide what your proper human diet is. For some people, it doesn't need to include any dairy whatsoever because of their genetics. Some people, it needs to include no starchy foods whatsoever because of your genetics. And there are probably many other things as well that just haven't been discovered yet, because back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, we stopped doing real nutrition research because we had all these pharmaceuticals that could fix any problem. And so we just stopped looking at root causes and just started doing research on, $1 million pills.
And I'm sure you've noticed this as well. If you look at groups of people who were very close to hunter-gatherers still, even a couple hundred years ago, Aboriginals in Australia, the children of slaves that came to the New World out of Africa, etc. When they go off and start eating a modern diet, the obesity rates that they experience are far beyond what you or I would. I mean, like some of the amount of weight that they'll carry in their backside, for instance. It just, you almost look at it and go, how is that even a thing? And I think it's the genetics we're hitting on. The closer you are to like that O prototype blood type, you're probably an O, I'm guessing, a positive or negative. The closer you are to the primitive archetype, the less tolerance for this modern diet you have.
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's well documented in the literature. People of Polynesian descent, people of African descent, people of Native Americans, any of these kind of older protected DNA repositories. The modern diet, the industrial diet, the town diet, it just wreaks havoc on their metabolic health. And we see this in African Americans in the United States. Their rates of amputation, I think, are 5 or 6 times higher than the rate of amputation in Caucasian or people of European descent. Their rates of kidney failure, their rates of blindness, off the charts, 5, 6, 10 times more than people of European descent. And we see this in Native Americans. Nisha and I, we were just watching a drama. I don't know if it was a series or a movie where we were settling the West. And it was just it was known, but even back then, that if the Native Americans ate the sugar and the flour, that they were going to be dead in just a few years. It was going to destroy their health. They all had diabetes eating the modern town diet. And so it matters much more to people with certain genetic heritage, but I think it matters to all of us because ultimately we're all the same species. But for some people, the death, the destruction, the disease, the disability happens much, much quicker. And I love the concept for today's live. That's why I agreed to do it, is because in the keto community, the carnivore community, the paleo, low carb, we're in this silo, right? Where we're like, well, duh, everybody knows that eating very low carb, that eating lots of red meat in your diet, everybody knows that that's the best. But the truth is, no, 85% of the population has never heard of this, or it sounds ridiculous or dangerous or kooky.
Or they've heard of it and they've heard all the warning bells from the establishment. You'll die. You need carbs for your brain. What other stupid shit they throw. Right. Like you can't assume. And I think there's another thing. There's like an elitism that turns people off. Yep. Like when you're like, it's my way or you're going to die. Yep. Then there's this whole like it's a funnel, like to bring people to better health, just like a sales funnel. A 100%. Shitload has to go in for a reasonable amount to come out at the bottom. Yep. And if people fall off to some of the things we're about to talk about, like at least they're not eating seed oils and fructose corn syrup, they're going to be healthier than they are right now.
Absolutely. And I think there's a greater awareness of diet because every day in USA Today or CNN or Fox News, you see this new article, Americans are sicker, they're fatter, they're dying prematurely, blah, blah, blah. It's just on. And I think there's a greater awakening happening now, where the average person 5 years ago didn't give a thought to their diet, Jack. Mm-mm. They just ate whatever was in the pantry. They ate whatever was on sale at the supermarket, right? Because it's all food. What does it matter? And I think there's a ton of people going, wait a minute, maybe it is the food, but I don't even know where to start. And if you watch the average keto influencer or carnivore diet influencer, you're like, that's weird. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm just looking for something that's moderately healthier than what I'm currently eating that kind of makes sense. And so that's why I'm happy to do this with you today to talk about, okay, so for the last decade, you haven't given any thought to your diet at all. You just ate whatever the hell you ate. And that was just fine. It didn't matter. But now you're like, maybe the food does matter, but I don't even know where to start. That's the people this is for.
Absolutely. So as we get into that, let's start off also with something that I think we need to say. We were making fun of the fact that I used to be a fat ass, and I said, hey, you used to be a fat ass too. And weight loss is an indicator of health.
Yes.
It's not the only indicator.
Absolutely not.
And I remember you at one of my workshops saying, here's these labs, and I want you to go through like a real quick list of the labs you should ask your doctor for. But the other thing that you said, and it kind of is, even though it was like 2 years ago, part was in my brain and made me do this show today. You said there are some people, they bring their carbs, and you meant total carbs, not net, under 100, and all this stuff just comes in a line, and that's kind of that genetic thing. But can you speak to that and the labs that you should tell your doctor you want run, whether they want to do it or not?
Yes. So everybody over the age of 20, if you've been eating the standard Western diet, the modern diet, whatever's at the supermarket, you immediately need to have your hemoglobin A1C checked. That's going to give us a 3-month estimate of what your blood sugar's been running. Most doctors know about that test. And if you ask for it, they'll be like, yeah, I don't think you need it, but we'll check it. That's fine. The second test, which arguably is the most important test anybody who lives in modern society needs to have checked, is a fasting insulin. Very, very, very important. The average doctor in the United States will say, well, you're not type 1 diabetic. I don't know why you would want that, because most people, even people who don't fatten easily, like Jack and I do, who don't develop prediabetes easily, like Jack and I do, they might have a normal body weight and they might have a normal A1C, But if you check that fasting insulin, all of a sudden it pulls back the curtain of your metabolic health. And although you may be slender, maybe just have a little belly pooch, not much, and your blood sugar is normal and your A1C is normal, all of a sudden you see that you have this hyperinsulinemia. And unless you have a tumor, which only about one person out of 100,000, that's why they have hyperinsulinemia. 999,999 people are going to have hyperinsulinemia because they're eating too many highly processed carbohydrates. That's why their fasting insulin is high. And then everybody's going to get a lipid panel check because their doctor wants to know what their total cholesterol and their LDL cholesterol is. But I want you to focus on your triglycerides and your HDL, which are part of the standard lipid panel. If your triglycerides are very, very high, you're eating too many carbohydrates. If your HDL cholesterol is very, very low, you're eating too many carbohydrates and not enough fatty red meat. And then the final lab test is a CRP, which stands for C-reactive protein. Most docs won't have a problem ordering that if you ask for it. That's going to show the level of chronic inappropriate inflammation in your body. And we kind of talked about gluten and we talked about lactose. And so a lot of people don't realize there's many other things that can be in the modern diet that can be inflammatory to you depending on your DNA, your genetics, your heritage. And so you're not going to know if your body's inflamed. If you're eating the standard Western diet and you don't check a CRP, you're going to be like, well, no, I feel normal like you, Jack. I wish you'd throw that picture up and let everybody see.
I'll have to find it again, but I'll do it.
Throw it up because I'd love to use that as an example. And keep in mind, when Jack and I talk about people being fat, we're not shaming. We're not judging.
No.
Both he and I used to be fat.
I can promise you that if I'm going to show you this picture, I'm not shaming fatness.
Exactly. Right. We're trying to help
people.
We're not trying to shame.
Like here, this is me.
Oh, not that one. Show the other one. That one's nothing. I want to see.
That was nothing. Oh, you want the one where I'm leaned back in the chair at the conference?
Yes. Show that
Where
picture.
Is that?
First of all, thanks to Jack for understanding that we need to be helping people. If somebody wants to make fun of him because he was fat 10 or 15 years ago, who cares?
I don't give a shit. I've said that. Like making fun of somebody that used to be fat for used to being fat, it's kind of like some weak sauce blank shooting, right? Like
exactly. Can you mag it up a little bit, Jack? I don't know if you can do that or not on screen.
I can figure out a way. Give me a minute.
Okay.
Here.
So
there we go.
There we go.
Look at that.
So you were definitely pre-diabetic right here.
Oh, no doubt. It's
Jack's
not letting me
fasting insulin level right here was probably 40, 50, 60, 70. But he didn't know. He probably knew he was pre-diabetic, but he didn't know he was hyperinsulinemic because that was not something anybody talked about back then.
No.
I guarantee you his CRP was also elevated. He was very inflamed. Look at the swelling. That's not fat in his face. It is some, but mainly that's just health fluid and an inflammation. He was miserable on a daily basis, but that was his standard. He was miserable every day. And one of the strengths of the human species is that we get used to what we get used to. And then that becomes our normal. And we don't realize how miserable we are on a daily basis. And I can talk about this back when I was 35. I thought I was just getting older. My knee hurt every day. I had reflux every day. I had heartburn. I had all the things. And I'm like, well, I'm just getting older. No, dude, you ain't old at 35. How old were you in that picture? Relatively, do you know?
Her mid-30s.
Mid-30s,
somewhere in the mid-30s. I had started the show. I think I started the show when I was 37. I was probably 38. And I was telling you, like, part of the problem at that point is I'd become so successful in the corporate world. I could have anything I want. If I was on the way home and I'm like, you know what I want tonight? I want creme brulee and a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue tonight. I could pull over, buy it, and come home with it and not apologize.
Yep.
And I come from a background, a very poor family.
Same.
And a lot of times when you come from a poor family where like getting to eat really good was something happened on Sundays at Sunday dinner, and that was pretty much it. When you come into money, you go kind of hog wild stupid. And that's exactly what happened to me. And back then I was still going elk hunting on my own, and I was that out of shape, and I could go up a damn side of a mountain and leave a guy 10 years younger than me in better shape sucking wind. So I was like, oh, I'm fine. No.
Right.
No. I was not fine.
That was a heart attack waiting to happen right
yes,
there.
It was.
In the next 10, 15 years, that was a heart attack waiting to happen. And I grew up in a family so poor that my other family members didn't even know that there were other food options. My grandmother, paternal grandmother, Granny Berry, she grew up during the Great Depression, and they were so poor that they didn't even know there was a Great Depression. We're right in the midst of it.
Same.
They had no idea because they could see chickens walking underneath the floor because of the cracks in the floor before the Great Depression, during the Great Depression, and after the Great Depression. Nothing changed for them.
Man, we have similar backgrounds. My grandpa used to tell me, he said, so one day they told us there was a depression and we didn't notice. Then they told us there was a war. We noticed that. And when we came back from the war, they said the depression was over and we still didn't notice it, except most of us had taken our salary from the military and paid off our houses.
Yep.
That was the big deal to my grandfather, that when he got out of the Navy at the end of World War II, his house was paid for. Right. Yep. That was economic good times. His house was paid for.
Absolutely. And so when I went to med school, got out, I'm a doctor now, I discovered all these new culinary things that I literally had no idea existed. And so I went kind of hog wild like you did. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have this real cheesecake.
Deep fried macaroni and cheese. Well, shit, son, me up.
Right, exactly. And so people need to understand right off the bat that just because a food is expensive or is looked at as an upper class food, that has no bearing on its healthiness whatsoever.
Yeah. Let's talk about some things that have happened since 1970. And in 71, I know there's people, especially in your audience, maybe you haven't talked about fiat money as much as I have. You might struggle with this, but in 1971, the U.S. left what was left of the gold standard. We got fake money, and fake food came with it. So I always start these projections in 1970. And in 71 is where it really goes crazy. 11.6% of Americans today are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. It was under 4% in 1970. And this is estimate, but 90 million plus are estimated to be pre-diabetic in a country with 330 million people. That's a full third of the people, roughly.
Yes, and I think that's an underestimate. I think if you checked an A1C on every single adult in the United States, the rate would be much higher than that.
I completely agree. Almost 1 million Americans today are in end-stage renal failure, which means they're either getting dialysis, a transplant, or dying.
Yep.
Right. That is it. I couldn't even find the number in 1970.
It was so small it was trivial. Yeah. Out of that number on dialysis today, the rate of which those people are from the Black population off the charts because they react so much worse to sugar-laden, high-carb, starchy foods.
Correct. Now, you'll like this one because you're the one that tuned me into this, and I started digging into it years ago. Dialysis centers. You told me there were more dialysis centers than Subway sandwich shops. I said, Ken's going a little over the top there. Then I drove from my house to downtown Fort Worth, and on one highway saw 3 dialysis clinics.
Yep.
Here's the monetary side of this, because this is part of the willingness to continue lying to people. The U.S. dialysis centers market is expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 5.29% between now and the year 2030 and be a $40 billion market in 2030.
Yep.
That's just the little remote dialysis clinics that you're talking about. Now, do you think people might lie for $40 billion, Ken?
Oh, absolutely. And I just finished a book. I was going to pull it up and show everybody. It's called something like How to Make a Killing. And Jack and I have actually talked about the dialysis. It's a nasty, dirty market. Where is that?
I got it
right here. Let me show this. Let me show everybody this. So if anybody wants to dig into just how dirty there's 2 big companies that are basically running. Yeah, here we go. Let me take a picture of this and blow it up so I can.
I think I have it. You tell me, is that it?
That's it right there. Yeah.
Okay.
How to Make a Killing. And so the dialysis company, Dita, and I can't remember the other company, but they have done so many egregious, dirty, nasty, illegal things over the last decade or two. This book chronicles it. I'm trying to set up an interview with Tom Mueller because Jack and I have been talking about this. That
sure.
On the DeVita website, you go and look at the recipes they recommend and the dietary recommendations, it's going to make your kidney disease worse.
Absolutely, it is.
It's going to absolutely push you to dialysis quicker than if you listen to Jack or I. And then Jack's question, my question is that ethical? Is that moral? When you're recommending a diet that's going to increase your bottom line because people are going to destroy the remaining kidney function, is that moral? Is that ethical? I don't think so. But I love this book by Mueller. I'm going to try to get him on my channel.
Awesome. And I'll tell you, folks, I figured this link between Dita and the American Diabetes Association out because of Ken. Ken started publishing these recipes that the ADA was recommending, like oatmeal raisin cookies.
With added sugar.
With added sugar for diabetics for their kidney health. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And I backtracked it and found this company, Dita, that Ken mentioned. Their only revenue model is building these dialysis clinics. And they're telling diabetics to eat cookies for dessert after they have a burger on a giant bun to control their diabetes and improve their kidney health. And I don't even have to ask the question if it's ethical. It's clearly not. This is drag somebody behind a truck level shit here.
Yeah.
That's my opinion of it.
Yeah, it's egregious. I totally agree.
Here's some other stuff. The obesity rate in 1970 was 15% in America. It's 42% today, right? And global seed oil production's about 200 million metric tons globally of growth since 1970. This right here, I'm going to pull this up quick too for those on the stream. That's vegetable oil production in the world beginning in 1909. It's too big if I blow it all the way up. But right there, 1969 to 1979, you can see where that growth curve begins, and it goes parabolic from there on up. This is, again, we'll always go back to 1970. And I just think about this, and this is where we're going to start getting into some of the diets that you can start with. In the 1970s and 80s, when I was a kid, and I would go to the beach when I was growing up in Jacksonville, Florida, I didn't see many fat people. And we were eating bread, and we were eating all this stuff that you and I avoid now. And most people were thin and fit.
Yep.
But there's a lot of things that people were not eating. They were not eating high fructose corn syrup. They were not eating seed oils, certainly not at the rates that we are today.
Right.
And that seems to at least be a part of this, which is why I wanted to break it down and kind of start at a lower level. And here's what I figured out, just looking at like all these different things that people try as eating plans. The ones that seem to actually work long-term involve whole foods, reduce or totally remove seed oils from the equation, have some form of portion control, and it's not necessarily calories, but like if you do what me and Ken say and eat beef, bacon, butter, and eggs, you're only going to eat so much. Yep. You're going to fill up when you have a fat-based diet, but there's some level of portion control, whether it's intentional or indirect, and they reduce or eliminate artificial flavors, addictive additives, concentrated flavorings, added sugar, like all that stuff is out. There's nothing on there that's like FD&C color blue 21.9, nothing like that in the ingredients of anything, of any diet that seems to actually make people healthier.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so let's talk about the 1950s. That was way before my time. I think Jack was alive then, but he's a lot older than me. Yeah. But so in the 1950s, they had cake, they had cookies, they had pie, they had bread, they had potatoes. So how were they so slim? Well, everything was cooked with animal fats, virtually. The Crisco was becoming popular, but the vast majority of moms and grandmothers still used animal fat for the majority of their cooking. And they practiced a degree of intermittent fasting, but they didn't call it that back then. Basically, you had breakfast at 7 or 8, you had lunch at noon, and you had dinner at 5 or 6. And when mama cleaned up the kitchen, she better not catch your ass in the kitchen. You would get hit with a spatula. And so you had this built-in 16-hour fast every day. And if you acted up, you got sent to bed with no dinner, no supper on what part of the country. And so you ate 2 meals a day with this 18 or 20-hour fasting window. If you were a bad boy like me or Jack, you got sent to bed often with no supper. And so you were eating animal fats and you were practicing intermittent fasting every single day, even though nobody called it that or even realized that's what it was. And I think that's why they were able to eat cake and cookie and pie and bread during the 50s and still be relatively thin.
Maybe not optimum health, but a hell of a lot healthier than we are as a society today. And we
100%.
talk about moderation today, and we have no idea what the word means. Here's moderation from a kid who grew up in the 70s and 80s with Ukrainian immigrant grandparents. We were devoutly Catholic, so we recognized Lent. Yep. And on the day that Lent ended, my grandma made homemade donuts. And we made the donuts with the holes, and she fried the holes separately and put powdered sugar on them. And you know how often I got donuts? Once a year.
Yep.
Once a year at the end of Lent, I got donuts that were made in the house by my grandma. And for fat, she was using lard or butter. Right? And she was frying them in lard, not seed oil.
Yep.
And that was the 1980s.
Yep. And so that's a good point, because when you're looking at anthropology, you're like, oh, well, humans were doing this at this time. Well, the humans in that location were doing that at that time. Many others didn't do that for decades or centuries later. Same thing goes for modern society. There are families, guaranteed there are families who are still using animal fat today, but they're very few and far between. The vast majority of people are using the vegetable seed oils because they've been touted as healthy and basically the only real choice. You're kind of weird if you don't use canola or corn oil or peanut oil or soybean or sunflower or safflower. Something wrong with you if you're cooking with lard and butter and beef tallow. Who the hell even does that? That's weird. And so that's the signal you see in the modern nutrition and medical research, is the vast majority of people think that canola, soybean, corn oil, peanut oil, they think that's healthy. They think that's a healthier option, and that's what you're seeing. So is recommendation number one for us, Jack, going to be to get the vegetable seed oils out of your diet?
Yeah. In fact, here's diet number one. We're going to start going through at 6. And again, if you're tuning in from Tenside, don't have an aneurysm, we're going to get to carnivore. We're going to go in stages here.
Yes.
But you're going to be surprised how quickly you get close to it without even trying to do it if you follow this regime. So number one, no seed oils, no high fructose corn syrup, no dyes, no artificial additives, limited to 3 meals a day and 1 snack. And I'm going to say something about snacks right now. I'm going to piss some people off. You do not need a damn snack. You are not a 5-year-old. But if you want one on that first diet, I'll give you 1 snack.
Yeah. And coming from as a father of 6, your 5-year-old doesn't need a snack either.
No.
Well, people think they have to feed their children every 2 hours or they'll become malnourished and emaciated. Absolutely untrue. Your children do not need snacks. Even if they're playing a soccer game, they don't need candy bars and little cutie wedges every break. That is a modern myth that is completely unnecessary, completely unhealthy, also unnecessary.
Absolutely. Now, here's what I find interesting about this. If you just do that, and I know, like I said, there's some purists out there, and God bless you, because I'm one too. But if you start thinking about what this is going to do to the average person's carbohydrate intake, tell me what box you can pick up off the shelf of a store and find no seed oils and no fructose corn syrup in it.
Yep.
And it's almost done.
Jack's just phrasing this a little differently than me, because what my first 3 steps are: eliminate all sugar, all added sugar, all of it. Number 2, eliminate all grains, wheat, rice, oats, corn. Number 3, eliminate vegetable seed oils. And so if you just take those 3 things out of your diet, you got to eat something. That's the kicker.
Yeah, you'll eat
something. And so if you remove what Jack says, or you remove what I said, you're going to be left with meat, eggs, vegetables, some fruits, and some nuts. That's what you're left with, which is that's low carb or keto right there. And that's where my spectrum of a proper human diet, that's where it begins, is only eat meat, veg, nuts, berries, a few fruits. That's a low carb diet by definition right there. And so you're already within the proper human diet spectrum, but let's not even get into that. Let's just stick with Jack's just step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yep. So step 2, we're going to do all the same things, But now we're going to look at our carbohydrates. And I tried to not even tell people not to eat wheat or anything because I have a damn heart attack when you tell them that. We'll get there. Trust me, when you start having to make decisions about how much carb you can have in a day, you'll start deciding what goes, and you'll start moderating it even if you still eat it. So the next one is you do the exact same thing. You just reduce your total carbohydrates to less than 100 carbs a day. And I mean total carbs, not
Total
net.
carb. Yep.
You also strive to eat food that's organic, grass-fed, grown locally, etc. The best quality food you can afford. And we've talked about this before. I'd rather a person be full-on keto and eat all feedlot beef than all organic and eat rice and bread. So,
100%.
But making the move, if you can do it, this is just time to start thinking about what is the quality of the food, not just the quantity. And I know there's a lot of people in the audience here that are going 100 carbs. That's a lot. So the official number of average carb intake per Americans is 250 to 300 carbs a day, depending on where you get that number from.
Yep.
But this has been my experience. When I get people say, I want to do keto, but I'm not sure, I have them get an app called keto.app. And I say, don't do shit for 2 weeks. Eat anything you want. Stay on the same diet. Just record it all and look at it. And most people tell me their carbs are somewhere north of 350 a day.
Yep.
And the reason I give them that assignment is they come back and go, okay, I see I have a problem here. It's amazing what happens when people just journal what they're eating. You don't make any judgments. Do whatever you want. Just know. And so I've had people come back and say they're at 400, 450 carbohydrates. So coming down to 25% of that number. And I also feel this way, when people start doing that, well, they're not going to hit 100 every day.
Right.
So they're going to be 70, 75 a lot of days too. And they're going to start eating, like you said, less wheat, less flour, less potatoes. All that's going to happen because you're going to have to make decisions based on it.
Yep. And let's just be very clear. Me speaking as a family physician with over 20 years of practice, if you just follow Jack's step 1 and step 2, that is going to completely reverse the prediabetes, the type 2 diabetes, the hyperinsulinemia, the chronic inappropriate inflammation in about 70% of people. Okay.
Yeah.
Just that, those, or in my 3 steps, get rid of added sugar, get rid of grains, and get rid of vegetable seed oils. That's going to fix 70% of the people out there who are overweight, obese, severely obese, pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetic, or hyperinsulinemic. That's going to fix them. And so, but there are some people that's not enough. And that's why Jack and I go further. But for the vast majority of people out there who are just trying to get rid of their belly pooch, or they've just found out they're pre-diabetic, just these changes alone, that's all it's going to take to reverse that back to normal.
And I also go along with, I really feel that if people will go at least that far, anybody can do it. I tell people go carnivore out of the gate for 60 days to see what happens.
Yep.
Because if I gave you $1 million to go to jail for 60 days, you'd have your inmate number tomorrow, right? So we can do anything for 60 days.
Right.
And I want people to experience clearing their body of all these toxins. You'll probably, if you're as bad a shape as I was, get some form of keto flu. You'll have some misery in between. But by the time you're done, will be the first time you can remember in your adult life that this didn't hurt, and you didn't even know it hurt anymore because you got used to it hurting. Like you said, people adapt.
Yep.
So what I find is if people will go that far, they'll go further. I don't have to make you. You'll start asking what to do next. Or you'll hit, like, I have a weight loss goal and I'm heading right for it, and then all of a sudden I'll plateau. And you say, how do I get off the plateau? And when somebody asks that question, they're giving you permission. So you're not verbal vomiting on them. With Jack and Ken, go full on ketovore, right? Like you're saying, okay, well, let's go a little bit further. And as we start going further, my third level is same as everything we've said, but now let's take those carbs down to 50 to 75 carbs a day and strive to get under 50 every other day, right? And that will, a lot of times that'll kickstart something. And I'm back to, this is total carbs. I do believe when you get into trying to be keto and under 20, and we'll get to that, you can trust net carbs if we're talking about broccoli and cauliflower, right? If it's in a box and it says net carbs, or a bottle and it says, throw that shit away. Yep. And by the way, most of that stuff, since we're not having these additives and these chemicals and stuff like that, you won't be eating carb balanced tortillas because it's got seed oils and all that other crap in it. So That's why I came at it this way, so that you don't have to worry about that when you get down to keto, because it won't be there. But
Right.
a lot of people, you get in at 50 to 75 carb, and we don't look at that in our space as being carb restrictive, but to the American diet, it's extremely carb restrictive.
Oh, totally agree. I think probably the average adult American's eating easy 300 total grams of carbs a day. Easy. And so if you drop that to 100, you're going to fix 2/3 to 70% of the people. If you drop that down to 50 or 75, now you're talking 80% of the people who are a little overweight or pre-diabetic or their blood pressure's creeping up. That's going to all go back to normal just from those little tweaks alone. Not everybody needs to go carnivore and stay carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do, but the majority of people don't ever have to do carnivore to completely reverse their metabolic disease. Being a little overweight, being pre-diabetic, having their blood pressure is a little high. My kidney function is not perfect. For the vast majority, 80%, 85% of people, just these things Jack said. That's it. That's all you need to get back to perfectly normal labs and to get your weight back close to your ideal body weight, but not for everybody. Some people need to go further.
And then if you do want to go further, or you feel the need to go further at this point, or maybe you want to go further and then come back the other way, like I'm gonna say something here as we're like halfway through this. It's really important to understand for a lot of you guys, what we're saying may not be enough in the beginning, even if it is long term. You're an addict, right? You're an addict. YouTube user here said, I think refined carbs are one of the most addictive things on the planet. Carbs, period, are one of the more addictive things on the planet. And as you know, I've done a real big deep dive into ancestral diets and what did people really eat. And I will tell you that even ancient societies that had something in their diet that was high in sugar, like let's say, if you go into the jungle, you can find fig trees that are bigger around in my house. And so, but what never existed in nature until agriculture is high fat and high sugar together at the same time. That was a very rare overlap, very short seasonal occurrences. And we used to gain weight in the fat of summer and early fall and lose weight all winter long. And our fat is our vitamin D storage battery. Yep. So we are hardwired. When we find fat and carb together, eat as much as we can, as fast as we can. In nature, that's okay because it ain't going to happen very often. You give somebody access to a Piggly Wiggly store and you put that together. That's what is the most addictive thing. Give somebody a pound of butter and say, eat as much as you want. They'll eat a bite maybe. You give them dry bread, they'll eat a slice. You put the two together, they'll eat the loaf and the pound of butter.
100%.
And that is what big food has figured out. Put this together and add some sugar to it, extra sugar, and you can sell all of it.
Yeah, and they've actually, the big food manufacturers have spent millions of dollars researching this. It's called the bliss point. And they know that if they get the fat and the sugar ratio just right and add a little salt, that's called the bliss point. And that's why they literally brag about it and say, oh, you can't eat just one. And they're not joking when they say that. They've spent millions in research ensuring that you can't eat just one, that you're going to eat the whole bag, and then you're going to eventually
open another bag,
family size bag, and then the variety pack, and then eventually that's all you'll eat because
and
it
lift
is
your fingers when you're done.
Yeah,
right.
And then we see this same thing in milk, Jack. All babies are addicted to milk because milk is got carbs, lots of sugar, and it's got lots of fat. It's made that way. And we want our 4-month-old infant. We want that infant to be addicted to mother's milk. We want it to crave mother's milk and try to climb and get to her breast. We want that so that baby doesn't starve to death. But as an adult, having access to the fat sugar combo every day is the definition of chronic disease.
Agreed. And just real quick, as we keep going through this, there's going to be someone here soon talking about complex versus simple carbohydrates. And I want to just kill that dead right now, unless we're talking about actual fiber in a plant. Okay. There is no difference biochemically when it goes in your body. And here's a doctor sitting next to me that'll tell you that right here. He'll tell you what I'm telling you is true. I will tell you it, though, as someone who occasionally makes a little bit of moonshine. If you bring me 10 pounds of bread, 10 pounds of potatoes, or 10 pounds of cane sugar, I will make you the exact same amount of vodka. Now, there is only one substance that can be broken down by yeast and converted into ethyl alcohol, and that is sugar. There is nothing else that yeast can turn into ethyl alcohol. If 10 pounds of those three things give me the same amount of ethyl alcohol, and trust me, they do, then there's no getting around this complex, simple BS. Your body, if you take a saltine, I did this when I was in kindergarten. You probably did too. You take a saltine cracker, put it on your tongue. It tastes salty and bland. And wait a minute and don't swallow it. And it turns sweet because your saliva converts those carbohydrates into a simple sugar. So it's all simple sugar. Please understand that. Yep. But adding refined sugar obviously makes bad worse. It's
makes bad worse. That's exactly right.
So diet 4, we get into true keto. Everything I've already said. So we're not eating high fructose corn syrup here. Can't afford it at this point, right, with the carb allowance. But we're not eating red number 7. We're not eating any of that stuff. So we're not eating the carb balanced tortilla that has all that crap in it. We are at 20 to 25 total carbs. Everything else is the same. Net carbs fine, but only with whole foods. Only with, just because a box says net does not, all these pastas and shit, like I said, they're out anyway. But then the other side is you're looking to try to now now we're going to take a conscious look at fat. Once 60 to 80% of our energy, our calories in from fat, good quality animal fats, etc. And I'm sure you deal with it all the time, more than I do, because I talk about this a couple times a month. You talk about it every day. People in their head, when you say that, picture a plate, and 80% of the volume on that plate is a blubbering fat, and 20% is meat, and there ain't no other food. We're still at a point where you can have salad and stuff like that as long as you keep it in balance. Fat is so much more calorically dense than protein. It doesn't look that way. A ribeye, if you look at a nice ribeye, nicely marbled, that's about a perfect ratio.
Yeah, especially if you cook the ribeye in either bacon grease or butter. That's going to be about a 1-to-1 fat to protein ratio, which, in my opinion, for anybody just starting this, that's the ratio of perfection. That's what's going to bring you your best health. The more often you replicate that, and so if you can afford a ribeye cooked in butter every day, that is the ultimate health food.
Yep, I agree, and I eat a lot of other cuts of cow, but that is my favorite. You can keep your tenderloins, folks. I don't need filet. Like, I ain't saying I won't eat it. I'm just saying, like, I don't crave it.
Right.
You want that fat ratio in there. We eat a lot of New York strip. We eat a lot of chuck. Lots of fat, lots of marbling. I don't know if you're familiar with a Denver steak, but if you find out what that is, you're probably going to eat them for the rest of your life. It's like a Kobe version of a ribeye, and it's on a regular cow, and it's the offside of the chuck eye in the chuck. Like, it's just a beautiful steak, and more of that you can eat, the better. But I'm just trying to get across to people, this doesn't mean you're eating a tub of lard and a couple chunks of meat. The fat is way more calorically dense.
Yes.
And lots of eggs too. I mean, that's another, I think eggs are a superfood. I keep ducks and we eat duck eggs all the time. And it's one of the things, like, if you had for breakfast, or I eat more, like, I'll have what I would call breakfast when Ken and I are done. I haven't eaten today at all, other than a little cream.
Nor have I.
Right. And I'm not hungry.
Nope.
Like, back in that picture I showed you, you know what I'd look right now? Sweat would just be pouring out of my head. I'd be shaking and yelling at you. Right. That's how I used to get. Now it's no big deal. But eggs, if you eat some eggs and bacon for breakfast at noon, you have to remind yourself to eat dinner before it gets too late.
Yep. Every day. That's my life. Grab that comment from Bill about sourdough. Let's talk about bread for a second, because there's so many misconceptions about bread. Yeah. So all of our ancestors, they never ate grains that were not processed properly. And I just did a great live interview with Dr. Bill Schindler about this. And he has a restaurant. He's an archaeologist, and he's been all over the world, all the blue zones, everywhere. Nobody before just a few thousand years ago would ever eat grains without preparing them properly, which involves soaking them, sprouting them, fermenting them. They just knew better. But through the trial and error of thousands of years of eating things and then watching the effects, they had learned you don't eat beans, you don't eat legumes, you don't eat grains without preparing them, processing them. And so all these things were soaked and sprouted and fermented and baked. And so sourdough is a great example. You can buy sourdough at the supermarket. Do you think that's real sourdough? No. The food chemists have tweaked their little chemicals so that it kind of tastes like sourdough bread. And so you can pretend, if you like, that that's real sourdough. But when you make sourdough bread at home properly, first of all, it ain't easy. Second of all, it takes a long damn time. Third of all, then you eat it. Now, do I think somehow the carbohydrates in sourdough bread properly prepared are less? No, they still count. You got to count those carbs.
Correct.
But the inflammatory nature of the bread is much less bad than just the routine bread you buy at the supermarket. The carbohydrates still count, I'm sorry. But sourdough bread made properly the old-fashioned way is less inflammatory.
Correct.
And a lot of people, they get confused about that. They're like, no, my wife makes sourdough bread at home and by God, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know. It's not as inflammatory, but the carbs still count. I'm sorry.
You have reduced one of the problems, but not the other problem, which is how much blood sugar you are creating in your body. Like I said, when you eat a saltine cracker, you ate sugar. When you eat a potato, you ate sugar. You ate a sweet potato because they said it was lower on the glycemic index. Great. Your insulin spike will happen. It'll go just as high. It'll take a little longer to get there. It doesn't matter. You've still jacked up your blood sugar. You've created an insulin response. And every time you do that, you lower your insulin sensitivity. And it takes more insulin to do the same job. And then you end up with a nation full of type 2 diabetics.
Yep,
so
exactly right.
Before anybody thinks we're being Gestapo on you now, we done gave you 3 diets. You can eat all the damn sourdough you want, and as long as you stay in check and you make your own. Some of your people are going to have an aneurysm when you see my item of the day at the end of the show today, because it's a book on how to make bread. Because I did that because I wanted to be seen as sincere in this, because we're taking a turn now where we're going to get very regimented on the way that we eat. You don't have to do it. We're just going to tell you everything. And we're going to be honest with you, even when you don't like the honesty. Right? I mean, that's flat out. Like, and if some of you are thinking, well, what about like 1 meal a day, 2 meal a day, all that? We're going to get to that because they can go in any one of these diets. So I broke them out separately. But Diet 4 is a true keto, 20 to 25 total net carbs. Foods, again, you want to try to get 60 to 80% of your calories from fats. 5 is a word I believe you invented, Ken. It's ketovore. So it's almost carnivore.
Nisha, she is the mother of ketovore.
Okay, so Nisha created ketovore as a word. I can just define that as almost carnivore. Herbs are okay, small amounts of greens, some berries from time to time, but the primary diet is almost all animal foods. Yes. Most meals are probably carnivore, even though they don't have to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And so ketovore is typically under 10 total grams of carbohydrates a day.
Okay.
And so there's 2 things we got to understand once you get to this level. There's the total carbohydrate count. And when I first started talking about this in 2017, I thought that was all that mattered. But now I'm well aware that there's a second question. How inflammatory is the carbohydrate you're about to eat for your personal physiology? And that's the other big thing. How many carbs, how inflammatory is it for you personally? And so Nisha, for example, she eats on average 10 total grams of carbs a day if you average up over a month. There are certain carbs that she loves but cannot touch. One is greens, like turnip greens, any of the greens. If she eats some, immediate gut inflammation. She looks 3 months pregnant. She's got gas. She's got diarrhea for 2 or 3 days, and she loves greens. Okay, collards. Oh, she loves them, but they are too inflammatory for her. So even though they're low
green total, but specifically brassicas. Right.
Exactly. Brassicas, all the brassicas, if she loves them, but she cannot eat them,
gotcha.
Or she's going to get inflammation. And so that when you get down to under keto as far as the carb count. Ketovore, carnivore, and even something called the lion diet. Those are for people who have inflammatory responses to certain things that, although they may be low carb, they're too inflammatory for their personal physiology. And ketovore, carnivore, and lion diet, that's really getting into the area where people with autoimmune conditions or people with known inflammatory response to either dairy or certain plants or even certain spices. For some people, they have to tighten their diet up even more so that they have an ideal body weight, a perfect A1C, a perfect fasting insulin, and remember that last test, CRP, C-reactive protein. Some people have to eliminate other foods if they want their levels of inflammation in their body to also be normal.
So, and I've heard that in a variety of different carb sources, vegetable sources, and some people, like, they might as well be carnivore, like you said, just told them because they can't. Like, like the things that are left that are low carb jack up their inflammation markers, even if some of the higher carb things don't as heavily. I've known many people, nightshades are out. Eggplant, peppers, tomatoes, can't have it. And they don't even know they can't have it until they eliminate it and put it back in. And I want to talk about that as we get to the final level here in a second, where I can eat probably the vast majority of the carbohydrates I consume come from one of those three things: peppers, tomatoes, and eggplant, maybe some cucumber. Right. And I eat a lot of green salad too. I eat a lot of like fresh grown arugula and some of the leaf lettuces. I don't really like iceberg lettuce, but small amounts of it. Or if I'm doing a soup, instead of a noodle or something like everybody else, I'll throw a handful of fresh arugula in there at the very end and wilt it down. And that works for me, but it may not work for you. And that's where I really want people to consider going as far as possible at some point in this walk, so that as you add things back in, you can identify that, because I can't tell you how long I was miserable and didn't know I was miserable, because you get these aches. And like I said, you adapt to them. And now I know, like, if we go somewhere and I'm like, screw it, I'm just going to have like some chips and some stuff. I eat that shit. The next day, my back hurts. I feel like an old man all of a sudden. And I guess I'm getting there, but I feel older than I am. And I didn't know. And so now I can easily identify this thing jacks with my inflammatory markers and this thing doesn't.
Yep.
So our last one, full carnivore. And I just described that as all your food comes from something that had a face. Beef, bacon, butter, and eggs is what you say. I'll throw, if it's real cheese, I'll throw cheese in that mix. And I think one of the things people need to understand, when you say beef and bacon, you mean animals.
Yeah.
Like lamb goes in that, right? Like you're just trying to, like, you're not specifically saying the only part of the pig you can have is the bacon.
And the reason we chose bacon, because it rhymes, it starts with the letter B. It's easy to remember, but also the fat to protein ratio of bacon is about 1 to 1.
Absolutely.
And so fat back is fine, hog jowl, pork belly, all those things are fine. The thing that the pork that I wouldn't recommend is like a big dinner ham, because it's too lean, or a pork chop, the way most butchers would cut the pork chop. It's too lean. You're getting all this protein without the fat that should come with it. Whereas beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, when we buy ground beef, we buy 70-30. We never buy 80-20 or 85-15. Never. It's always 70-30. And when we have our local processor butcher a cow for us and process a cow, I would fire him if it was anything leaner than 70-30. He knows that. Yeah. He knows I want all the fat. When he trims my ribeyes, I've got the full fat cap on there, because that's the way human beings are supposed to eat. Keto and carnivore are not high protein diets necessarily. They are going to have more protein in them than the standard American diet. That's not what makes them work. It's that fat that comes with it, because that's going to give you a level of satiation, of fullness, of being full for a long damn time. It's 1 p.m. here. I haven't eaten. I'm not the least bit hungry. I probably won't eat today until 4 p.m. And I don't know if Jack, have you had your lunch, bacon and eggs yet, or not yet?
No, I'm going to have duck. I'm going to have duck eggs and some sausage I made myself when we're done.
Nice.
When we're done.
How are these two men in their 50s? Jack's a lot older than me, but how are these two men in their 50s They haven't eaten all day. How are they not hangry? How do they not have low blood sugar? How do they seem so mentally focused and able to do this almost hour-long live without being distracted or nodding off and falling asleep?
Falling asleep,
How is that
like Biden.
Ask yourself that question. If you don't think diet matters much, ask yourself that question. How is that possible?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll tell you, like, some of the things I'll do, like, I'll go buy, like, I think one of the best things you can get for the money is a full New York strip loin, right? And you cut your own meat off that. Now, where I do differ with you, I take quite a bit of the fat off of that because the fat cap on there can be 1.5 inches thick and it just doesn't cook well. But not a bit of that fat goes away. So what I'll do, I'll buy a bunch of big cuts, I do it all at once, and I take everything aside for the grinder. And I'm going to get that fat ratio about 75 to 25 in my ground. All the extra fat, I put it through the thick side of the grinder after I'm done with grinding the meat because I got to clean the grinder anyway. I throw that in a crock pot and I render that to tallow. Perfect. And when I make a lean cut, and I do that with pork too, if I make a lean cut like a pork chop or whatever, I throw a freaking duck egg with a runny yolk on top of it. Oh, yeah. And when I'm cooking that thing, I'm bathing it in tallow or rendered lard and some sort of form of seasoning. So that's going to take that lean cut and bring the fat ratio up in it. And I know there's people that maybe are from more of the Atkins school of thought with the carb restriction. That's where I originally came from. I never made it stick like I have with this, though, because without the fat, you don't satiate the appetite, and you're going. It's like being an alcoholic hanging out in a bar. You're going to drink. That's what happens without that fat to satiate you.
You're going to go back to the carbs at some point. You can't help it.
Yep. You just, because you're an addict. And I think we need to be honest, the average American is an addict, and it's no more your fault than the opiate addict who was told by their doctor in the 90s, thanks Purdue Pharma. Yep. It's interesting how Purdue seems evil, no matter which Purdue we're talking about here. Thanks Purdue Pharma. When your doctor told you if you're actually in pain, you can't get addicted to opiates.
Yep.
Which is the most asinine pile of bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, perfect analogy. And just like in the past decades when filtered cigarettes came out, and doctors said, "Oh, you got to stop smoking those unfiltered Camels. They're really bad for you. Smoke these new filtered cigarettes." Yeah. Doctors literally gave that advice to their patients. They're like, "See, I smoke filtered. You don't smoke."
I've seen the ads from the 50s. More doctors smoke Camels than any other brand or whatever. Yeah.
So what Jack, his point is, it's not your fault, but it absolutely is your problem.
And your responsibility.
It is. And you've got to own it and go, okay, it's not my fault I'm a carb addict. It's not my fault that I thought all these things at the supermarket were healthy. But it's my problem because I'm the one with a 48-inch waist and pre-diabetes and hypertension and in all kinds of other things that, ED, things we don't want to talk about. It's not your fault, but it is your problem, my friend. And you're going to have to take charge of your diet. Either by following my steps or Jack's steps. I don't care which. I literally don't care because either one's going to get you where you need to be, which is a proper human diet.
So, I've had a lot of debates with vegans and things like that. And what they'll always say is if you look at the data, the vegans in this country are healthier than the people eating the standard diet. And my response to that is everybody on any regimented diet is better than all the people in line at the state fair because you're actually focusing on what goes in your body.
Yes.
So I do not advise veganism for anybody, but I won't get in somebody's way that wants to do it. I will say if you want me to design a diet that's vegetarian, but lacto-ovarian vegetarian, I can get very damn close to what we're talking about even here at the end.
Yep.
But if you take away eggs and you take away butter and you take away cream and things like that, I'm at a loss for what to tell you.
Yep, I totally agree. And I love it when somebody goes vegan. I love it because it means they're thinking about the food they're eating.
Sure.
And when they go vegan, it's just a matter of time before that's going to turn into either keto, ketovore, or very often carnivore. because
they're not going to stay there.
Thinking about their food, that's it. They're now awake, and sooner or later they're going to be eating a proper human diet.
Yeah, and I would say veganism is a modern luxury.
100%.
Like you can't. I've challenged people. No, these monks here. No, nothing. Yeah. Find me an indigenous society that was vegan. There isn't one.
No, I was just interviewing just a few minutes ago an archaeologist, paleoanthropologist, and he said unequivocally the research is very clear. There has never, ever been a society before 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years ago that was vegan, ever. And not only was there not, there could not have been, because in order to not starve to death on a vegan diet before the modern agricultural revolution, you had to cook the food. And so by the time you'd done all the gathering, and by the time that you had gathered the firewood to cook the vegetables with, you would be at a negative nutrition balance, a negative calorie balance. You're literally, your whole tribe would have starved to death. It was literally impossible before modern society and refrigeration and cargo ships. It would be biologically impossible for you and your family to live on a vegan diet. It was just not something that would be, you couldn't do it by the just physics and biology.
Yeah. And I would also say that pure veganism, you're on some sort of supplement.
100% of the time.
So if we go back to before there was a CVS or an Albertsons with a supplement aisle, you ain't doing it.
100%. Absolutely accurate. You might do it for a few weeks, and that's what tricks a lot of people. They are eating standard American Twinkies, Ding Dongs, donuts, Doritos, Pepsi, and they go vegan. All of a sudden, they feel better. Yes,
sure,
you're going to feel better because you've eliminated all of this inflammatory shit, and you're just eating vegetables. But the problem comes is in a few months or a few years when you start to develop vitamin and mineral deficiencies.
Correct.
And omega-3 fatty acid deficiencies. That's when the problem comes. And hopefully by then they've done enough reading and research to realize, oh, vegan's a good first step, but I need to go further. And that's when they discover a proper human diet.
Just read Leanne Keith's stuff if you want to understand. She's a hero to me because she was willing to step out and tell the truth.
Yeah, I'm going to interview her on the channel coming up in a few months.
She's a great interview. Let's throw some stuff in you can add. First of all, we already hit this, but no snacking. Like, that's one thing you can do so easy. You're not a 5-year-old in kindergarten. And I know you said kids don't need a snack. I'm trying to make a point to people.
I got you. Yeah, no, valid.
You said it was 16-year-olds that drink beer, right? If you're going to have a drink, have a gin and tonic, right? Don't.
That's right.
You know?
Nobody needs to snack. Now, if you're currently injecting insulin and you're taking 6 diabetic medications, as you lower your daily carbohydrate intake, you may need to snack from time to time until you're off the insulin and off most of the medications. But just a human on no medication, nobody needs a snack ever. If you're eating a snack, it's a sign of either boredom or ignorance or immaturity. The end.
And I'll also tell you, if you do something like fry up a bunch of bacon, keep it in your refrigerator, when you want a snack, say, well, I can have a piece of bacon. When you think I don't want a piece of bacon, you're not hungry.
That's right.
If you're actually hungry, you will eat the shit out of that bacon.
Every time.
And isn't it funny how you get people at a restaurant, they pig out. You want anything else? No, I can't eat nothing. Waiter brings a cake over. Dessert tray. All of a sudden, people have room. That is a carbohydrate addiction thing. That is not hunger. Because you just said, hey, would you like another lobster? Oh, no, I'm freaking too full for that. But you can eat cheesecake?
Yep.
There's a biochemical and an emotional and a mental thing going on in all of those. And we can't have this discussion unless we keep coming back to that, because people need to understand, if I'm counseling you to get off alcohol at 12-step, I'm going to talk about the mental as much as the physical, because if I don't, you're going to fall out and you're not going to recover and you're not going to kick the addiction. This is an addiction. And Ken said, it's not your fault, but it's your problem. And I'll say it's your responsibility now that you know. TMAD and OMAD, I think both of those can go in any of these diets. For people not familiar with the acronyms, 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day. I am going to say 9 days out of 10, I'm on a 2 meal a day eating regime. I do not hold myself to it. If I wake up this morning and like I'm getting ready to do my show and I'm like, I could eat, I'll go grab a couple duck eggs and I'll throw them in the pan and throw some bacon grease on them. But that just doesn't happen very often anymore.
Right.
But if you're on a 3 meal a day thing and you're on any of these levels and you've plateaued, It's amazing what happens when you go to 2 meals a day and stick them as close together as you can and make that window on the outside as big as you can.
Absolutely. And what many people find is when they start to eat enough healthy animal protein and healthy animal fats, they just almost unconsciously stop snacking and go to 2 meals a day. And then some days it'll just be 1 meal, because when you're eating so much healthy animal fat and healthy animal protein, you are satiated much more so than if you're still eating the majority of your calories in the form of carbohydrates, which are the least satiating of all the carbs. That's why when you go to the Chinese restaurant and you eat until you literally feel like you're going to burst, you literally feel like your stomach's going to explode. 2 hours later, you're hungry. 2 hours, if that, right? And that's because what you ate was 90% carbohydrates, and they're gone. Your insulin spiked, then your insulin plummeted. Now you're hungry again because you didn't eat any real food.
I'll do you even one up on that. If you go out and you pig out, like you find an all-you-can-eat seafood bar, and they exist, they're rare, because when somebody like me gets on one, you're going to wish you didn't do that. Yep. But you're eating all fish and all. You leave the drawn butter out of that, and you've eaten almost 100% protein. And your blood sugar doesn't go nowhere. But you know what happens? You do get hungry. You can eat in 2 hours. Like if you go to the sushi place and you leave the rolls alone and you're all sashimi, you're still at a point where you're like, yeah, I could eat now. And so that fat, you only get so much belly tuna and belly salmon out of that, and you're going to want to eat more. So that's something people need to realize. If you're not bringing, that's why we're so big on bringing the fat to the table. But if you can go 2 meals a day, 1 meal a day, and you don't have to like commit to nothing but that. Do 2 meals a day, 3 days a week. Do it 2 days a week. Do 1 meal a day, 1 day a week. Do 1 meal a day, 1 day of freaking every 2 weeks. Give it a shot. And you start to move then into the world of fasting. And so you're getting in, like if you're doing 2 meals a day in an 8-hour window, you are fasting 16 hours without even thinking about it.
Yep. And then if you can bump that up to where you're eating your 2 meals in a 6-hour feasting window and fasting for 18 hours a day.
Wow.
For me personally, that's the sweet spot where my weight goes right where I want it. All of my blood markers go right where I want them effortlessly. And then, like I said earlier, I'm just not hungry until my 6-hour feasting window gets here anyway. So it's easy. But if anybody watching this, if you're not eating enough fats, and you're not eating enough protein, you're sitting there going, I don't know how the hell these guys, I've got to eat the minute I wake up, and then I got to have a snack, and then lunch, and then a snack, and then dinner, and then a snack.
Yeah.
And maybe then a second supper before I go to bed. It's because you're not eating enough healthy animal fat in your diet.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I just want to hit this real quick so we don't have to come back to it. Steven says, government, cockroaches around the world like to poison the population. They killed my parents. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm going to sound like I'm advocating for government here, but I'm not. I'm going to tell you there's different motivations from different groups. I think big food and big pharma wants you sick. I have no doubt about that. Government, I think, doesn't care if you're sick. What they don't want is you to get pissed off, go into the Capitol building and start hanging politicians and bureaucrats by their feet upside down naked and dying from lampposts. Historically, people will tolerate a lot of bad things without rebelling against their government. Inflation, all kinds of horrible atrocities. When people don't eat, there is a long history of politicians swinging when people are hungry. So if they can figure out how to keep you from starving, and it means they're poisoning you, they'll take that approach as a self-preservation. And I think the state is more motivated for self-preservation like an organism than they are, we want you sick and dead. I think the lobbyists want you sick and dying.
Yeah, and if the food is the slow poison, and that's what I don't think they wouldn't tolerate if there was strychnine in the food supply. They would crack down on that immediately. People would go to prison. But if the food takes 20, 30, 40 years to make you fat, to make you sick, and then ultimately to kill you, and you die 20 years before your lifespan would have said you need to die, nobody's going to get sued over that. Nobody's going to go to prison over that. Everybody at every stage of that is going to make a profit. Big food initially, then big pharma on the back end, and Dita with their dialysis. Everybody's making a profit. Therefore, all the big corporations are going to be paying lots of lobbyists to take lots of congressmen and senators to $500 a plate lunches and dinners, and nobody's getting sued and nobody's getting strung up by their heels. That's a self-perpetuating system until enough people in the general population wake up and go, what the hell? And when enough people wake up and start to stand up and speak up, that'll shut that down as well. But right now, so many people don't even realize there's a problem, that everybody's making out like a bandit. Everybody's protected. All the bean counters are happy. The lawyers are happy. The accountants are happy. But the average person sitting here at home watching this, they're the ones who either their health personally is suffering or the health of someone they love very, very much is suffering. And they're watching them slowly wither, slowly become disabled, slowly die. And they're like, I don't even know where to begin. Well, Jack,
we've been convinced it's just that's what happens when you get old.
That's right. I'm just getting older. No, that's not what it is.
Yep. Even doctors tell you that. Well, you're getting older. Don't worry about it. You're getting older. Don't worry about my kidneys going to stage 2 kidney disease because I'm getting older. Yeah. Well, most people have that. Well, maybe most people freaking shouldn't have that. And on that note, kind of my next addition thing that you can do in any of these diets is either completely eliminate, and many people need to completely eliminate this, or at least reduce it to something you do once a week, and that's alcohol. And I would say alcohol is definitely metabolized differently than any of your protein, fat, carbohydrate, your macros. For the purpose of this, if you're not going to do what I just said, then you should look at your calories from alcohol as though they are calories from carbohydrates. 100%. That's the best advice I can give you without being draconian. And as much as I've drunk in my past, I'm not going to sit up here and be sanctimonious about it.
Well, I was just going to say, let me give you guys the fact that Jack Spirko is saying this. Jack loves alcohol.
I do.
He loves making it. I've never known a human who can make alcohol from, I think you could give him a sack of chicken shit and he can make alcohol out of it. I've never seen anything like it. He can make alcohol out of anything, and he loves to make alcohol. And he loves to drink alcohol. So the very fact that Jack Spirko is telling you, hey, dummy, you need to cut back on the alcohol.
Yeah.
It's poison. That's a big damn deal.
Yep. I've pretty much, other than workshops and stuff, gone to where I drink maybe once a week. And sometimes I go 3-4 weeks without a drink. I know people have a hard time believing that if you've seen me in a party situation, but there's party and there's the real world. And we're going to talk about that too here in a second. But definitely cutting that back. And I tried to make this work. And when I went and looked at the metabolic means by which your liver breaks down alcohol, then I realized something, that basically it goes to the front of the line because it's a poison. So whatever else you've done to jack your blood sugar up stays that way until your liver clears the alcohol. So if you want to kill yourself as quickly as possible, drink Cosmopolitans, drink vodka and cranberry juice, drink screwdrivers. Put alcohol and sugar together. If you want to die, if you want to just donkey kick your liver every time you take a sip, lots of sugar. And think about, what do people drink? They drink all these simple syrup-based things. And you talk about, again, I know I sound like a party pooper here, but it's
Jack and Coke, man. You got the alcohol, you got the high fructose corn syrup. That's a literal death sentence to your liver, decades before your liver would have worn out.
Yep. Absolutely. And it's hard for people to understand that because we've been taught otherwise, but it just is. Next up is straight up fasting. 1 to 4 days, more if you want to. And I'll tell you that I've never really done more than 24 hours of fasting, but I've seen the benefits of that. You were talking earlier about getting that window down, even in the 1 meal a day, down to 6 hours. When we start fasting, whether it's intermittent or straight up fasting, we get into something called autophagy. You want to explain to people what that is? Because it might be the thing that you should learn in 7th grade biology that they'll never teach you.
Yeah. So if Jack and I were stuck in our house in the middle of a Tennessee winter, had a fireplace, and then outside I had a couple of stacks of wood, and it got 20 below zero. And Jack's like, dude, I'm freezing, build a fire. What would I start doing? Would I take an axe and start chopping up the living room furniture and burning that? Or would I go get some of the wood that I'd stacked up for that very purpose and start doing that, right? Your body is not an idiot. Your body and your DNA are brilliant, very ancient, very wise. When you fast, when you don't eat, your body starts to grab older cells and older mitochondria, damaged cells, damaged mitochondria, senescent cells, and your body starts to grab those and recycle those. It's not going to smash up and burn the beautiful armoire. It's going to get the trash. We're going to burn the trash. We're going to burn the wood.
Right.
We're going to burn the kindle. We're going to burn all the stuff that doesn't really matter first. That's what your body does when you're not eating it. And so autophagy is the process by which your body starts grabbing old and damaged cells and breaking them apart and using those parts to build new cells. You also do that with your mitochondria, the little energy powerhouses. You start doing that same thing. And it looks like the rate of that starts to really ramp up at about a 16 or an 18-hour fast. And that's why I think that 18-hour number is really magical for a lot of people. People who haven't seen me for 5 or 10 years, when they're like, dude, like people I graduated high school with, they're like, you've had plastic surgery. You've had this. There's something. I don't know. And I'm like, no, dude, I fast for 18 hours a day. And when I do eat, I eat animal fat and animal protein. That's literally my life. There's nothing special. There's no Botox. There's no plastic surgery. There's nothing. And I'm not trying to say I'm some kind of Greek God. I'm trying to say when you put me up against my 20 other guys who graduated high school with me, I stand out. And it's not because I'm special. It's because of what I eat and also when I eat. And so a lot of people think, well, it's too late for me. No, Bubba.
No.
You start eating 2 meals a day in a 6-hour window full of predominantly animal fat and animal protein, and you fast for 18 hours a day, eat as much as you want during those 2 meals. I don't think you have to portion control at all if you're carnivore. Eat until you cannot eat another bite, 2 meals a day in a 6-hour window, and then fast for 18 hours a day. Take a picture now and then start taking a monthly picture in your tidy whities. And don't post them, please. We don't want to see that, but you save them on your phone. And then you look from month to month to month. It will literally look like you're aging in reverse.
Yes.
Because of the autophagy and the mitophagy. You're not aging in reverse. You're just going back to what somebody your age should look like and would look like if they've been eating a proper human diet all along.
Agreed. And I think that like the closer you push that 2 meal a day window, the closer you are to 1 meal a day.
Yep.
Right. I can eat for 2 to 3 hours if I really, really wanted to, and I spaced it out, depends on how much I eat per helping. I think one of the things that's always made my life a little harder too, and why I've had to get regimented with this, is I was in the Army. You learn to eat fast.
Yeah.
Like I always be, you cooked, you should sit and eat first. No, because if I sit down to eat while y'all are still screwing around getting your shit, I'll be done before your ass hits the chair. I always go last for that reason when we have people over to eat, because I'm going to eat quick. And that's something, if you have that for whatever reason you have it, because you grew up with brothers that would steal your food, you're in the military, whatever, and that's bad for drinking too, man, because they put booze in your hand at 17 in the Army. And they also teach you how to down a quart canteen of water while you're running in 3 seconds. So that's all bad. And keep that in mind if you have that in common. Exercise. I think everybody should do this in some way. There needs to be some exercise, and lifting weights is a huge thing as far as, especially, I think men and women both, we need the muscle mass. I like hitting a heavy bag. I think that really works all the muscle, but something that causes physical endurance. And then I think it shouldn't be just one or the other though, whether it's running, walking, hiking, something that causes cardiovascular conditioning. Because this is how our ancestors were. Yeah, they laid around the fire all the time and shit, but then they had to go do stuff. Well, they didn't get there in a car or a moving walkway or an escalator. They had to physically move their damn body.
Absolutely. Exercise is vital. Exercise is good for you in hundreds of ways. But a lot of people in the keto community, they heard me say a few years back, exercise is a terrible way to lose weight. And that's absolutely true. The research is very clear about that. Thinking you're going to join the gym to lose weight, you are wasting your money. Now, I didn't say I don't want you to join the gym. I just said I want you to exercise, but that's not a way to lose weight. That's never going to work. When you start working out, exercising heavily, you stimulate your appetite. You're actually hungrier more often, and you eat more. So forget about that. Exercise is not going to help you lose weight, although every gym in America, as January 1's coming up, they're going to be advertising and trying to hit that pain point. Oh, you want to lose weight? Join the gym. That's bullshit. That's not how you lose weight. You lose weight by cutting the carbohydrates drastically and cutting down your eating window to a sustainable, whether it's 6 hours, 8 hours, even 10 hours. I don't care. You can do a 10-hour eating window in it with a 14-hour fast. Perfect.
Yep.
Great place to start.
Yep.
But exercise is not going to help you lose weight. But Jack's exactly right. If you want to be healthy and vigorous and a little bit dangerous, you need to be doing some kind of weight resistance exercise and some kind of endurance exercise. And for many people who have been sedentary for decades and the couch has been the only thing in their house they pay attention to, it's going to take a minute for you to get back into that. And Jack and I don't want you to overdo it too much too quick. But you need to get your ass up and start doing some kind of movements. That is going to make you healthier. But it's not going to help.
It's as much mental health as physical health. And here's what this makes me think of. This fall, I was at, or spring, whatever it was, I don't know. I was at John Willis's place, and there was a guy asking about trying to get out of his head and being depressed and all. And he actually had a pretty good life, but yet he was dealing with depression. And John said, when you, on your 7th rep of something you can only do 10 of, whatever you're depressed about, you won't be thinking about that.
100%.
And I think there's something to that. I mean, when I'm working a heavy bag and I set the timer wrong and I'm supposed to be doing a 2-minute round and it ends up being a 4-minute round, by the time I'm done with that one, I think I'm going to die. I'm not worried about any of my problems.
Nope.
And I think having that mental reset is huge. And so other things play into that we'll talk about next. But I think that we need that. We're supposed to play as humans.
Yes.
And good exercise is just a form of play.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on that, my last one in this of these add-ons is meditation. And what I have in my notes is you do not have to contemplate your navel to be meditating. When I am standing waist deep in the ocean and an 8-pound redfish picks up a little crab and takes off, and I got one little 6-pound line connecting me to that redfish, I am in a state of meditation at that point. So whatever it is for you, when I am in a tree stand that is, a couple square foot in size up there with a bow, and I'm sitting completely motionless, waiting for a deer for 6 hours without moving, I'm in a state of meditation. So whatever that means to you, I think there's a place for contemplation and tuning out the bullshit and focusing on something, whether it's your breath, or was that movement a deer's ear, or was it a squirrel? Like, no matter what it is, when you get focused on something outside of this artificial world, this bubble we live in, that mentally your health will improve and thereby physically your health will improve. Because I've also heard this, Ken, when I get my mental state right, then I'm going to diet. That's backwards. No, that's like saying, when I don't get drunk anymore, I'm going to go and join Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, you got to fix the underlying issue. And for many of us, it is mental.
Yep. And let me say this, and let me be very clear about this, and I think Jack will agree. Jack actually structured this entire thing starting with the most important first. And so did I. Yeah. But I always have to say this now, because I kept seeing these people that love to get a major in the minors. They love to just get into the minutia. And they're like, oh, meditation, yes, okay. And ignore all the other shit we've been talking about for an hour and a half. And think that, okay, their take-home message today would have been, okay, exercise and meditation. Got it. No. Go back to the beginning and watch it again. The first shit we talked about, that's the most important shit. If you don't exercise or meditate for the first 3 months you're on this journey,
don't care.
I don't care. I don't think
Jack care at all.
We want you to do number 1, number 2, number 3 first. They are the most important. That's going to give you 80%.
Purge the poison from your life. Get the poison out of your body first.
Yes. Then after you've done that, then we'll talk about exercise and meditation. And I think meditation, and I love your definition. For me, currently meditating is carrying a very cumbersome, huge double arm load of hay.
Okay.
That I'm scattering all over the 40 acres here of the farm, walking blind through a pasture that is completely uneven. You never know if there's going to be a hole or a divot or a tree root or a stump, and literally having to focus all of my energy and my mental focus on not busting my ass until I get where I'm going. That's meditation. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
I almost meditated myself into needing a new iPhone yesterday. I was flame weeding and it bailed out of my pocket, and I almost burned it to oblivion because I was in that transcendental state of I'm doing this thing and nothing else matters, and I don't want to set my raised beds on fire.
Yep.
So,
for me, it's farm work. That's my meditation.
Yeah.
For some people, it's building miniatures. For some people, it's activities in the bedroom. I don't think it matters as long as you're just focused on one thing and your full focus is on that. That's meditation. And that laying on the couch watching TV. No, I'm sorry, Bubba. That's not meditation. No,
that's not meditation. That's tuning out versus tuning in. We're talking about tuning in to something higher than yourself, and or to your highest self might be another way to look at, or to your higher self if you're not quite ready for highest self. I also want to say a little bit about some flexibility here. If you fall back to a lower level on this, it's not the end of the world. Like if I told you, Ken, I'm going to be keto one day a month, you say, well, that's not going to do jack shit for you, because it won't. Because what you do one day a month, unless it leads to something more, is not going to change your life. Like if I'm going to eat garbage 29 days a month and eat good food one day a month. So if I occasionally eat something off my regimen one day a month, my life's not going to go into a total train wreck. Be better if I didn't. But I think what's worse than doing it is then beating yourself up about it and having some kind of hard feelings about it, instead of just going, tomorrow I'm going to go back to doing what I know to do.
Yeah. And so if you think about the modern supermarket diet, if you think of the majority of that stuff as slow poison, that helps you understand. Just like we talked about alcohol. Alcohol is poison, period. You cannot argue around that. I don't care if you say, oh, no, I make this pure grain whiskey in my own barn. I don't care. Oh, this is red wine. They said it. No, shut up. No. Alcohol is poison. The end. Okay? The dose makes the poison. The same goes for the supermarket foods.
Yeah.
And so to the degree with which you minimize all the things in Jack's number one thing he talked about, or my number 1, 2, and 3, you're eliminating slow poisons from your diet. So if you said, well, if I just started doing keto 1 meal a day, would that help me? I would say, yeah, you're going to be ingesting less slow poison. That's going to help a little with your inflammation and with your blood sugar and with your insulin levels. Yes. If you have the intentions of slowly increasing that, then I'm 100% for that. If you say, look, I'm going to do keto 6 days out of the week, but on Saturday, I'm going to eat whatever I want, I would say 100% do that. Yes, that's a great place to start.
Yep.
Because then, like Jack said earlier, you're going to have this elimination type diet happening. And then when you do have your fun on Saturday, Sunday
you feel
morning,
like dog shit on Sunday, you're going to think about it.
Just like when you used to be a knuckleheaded teenager or 20-something and you partied on Saturday night, then had to drag your ass to church on Sunday. After so many years of that, you're like, that's dumb. I should stop doing that.
Yeah. You wake up every morning going, I'm never doing that again. One day you actually mean it.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So the degree to which you eliminate the highly processed, high carb, inflammatory crap.
Yeah.
And start eating a proper human diet full of healthy animal fat and protein, your health is going to improve to that degree. And so some people are teetotalers, Jack. They just got to say, okay, Monday I'm going carnivore. That's it. Yep. Some people, that's their style. That's how they have to do it. Other people are moderators.
Yep.
And they're like, God, I can't do that. I'm going to slowly start to convert. Yes, 100%. Yes. Do that if that's your style.
And that's the whole purpose of this today, because I know when I talk about keto, carnivore, etc., I get 75% of my audience that won't even take step 1, and I don't want that. And if you only come halfway, you only come halfway. I don't run your life. I don't get to tell you anything. about how to live. I just tell you how I live and give you advice, and then you choose what you do and how you design your life.
Absolutely.
But I think that if you do start to say, well, I went all the way to straight up keto, 20 carbs a day or less, and I'm going to kind of go back into more like a 50 carb thing and keep all my diet clean off. At that point, you should keep an eye on your weight.
Yep.
And you should keep an eye on your markers. But above all, you should keep an eye on how you feel so you don't become accustomed to these aches and pains again. Because, again, if you do something long enough, you adapt to it and you just think that's the way it is and my body's supposed to feel like this, and it's not. So if you start having some aches, pains, and some things like that, like you didn't fall off a tree, right, and hit the ground, and that's why your face hurts. Your back starts hurting, and you didn't really do anything different than normal. Look at what you've been doing as far as food you've been eating, and maybe your carbs are where they need to be for whatever it is for you, but you've started eating something or consuming something that you have that inflammatory response, like you were talking about Nisha, like basically greens can't have it. Like pay attention to that and listen to your body.
Yep, absolutely.
Next, I would say also have your labs done, especially if you're going to start doing this, and confer with a doctor that's not an idiot. And that might be a little harder than it sounds because doctors are smart because you don't get through medical school if you're stupid, but you can get through medical school and be educated into idiocy. And most doctors are. That's why you have a book called Lies My Doctor Told Me, because they believe their own bullshit because they've been conditioned, they've been trained. Like there's teaching and there's training. And most of what happens in the establishment today is not teaching, which is enabling education. It's training, which is to condition an organism till it cannot perform any differently than you want it to. My dog is trained. When I say house, the dog goes in the house. I can train a slime mold. I can train a grapevine, but I can't teach a grapevine. Humans need to be educated, not trained. There's a place for training. If you're doing a surgery, Ken, then there's certain procedures you should follow so you don't kill that person. So I get that part. But when it comes to nutrition, this should be an educational paradigm versus a trained paradigm. And so you got to find the right doctor. And I think one of the things you'd agree with is, especially if you're on a bunch of meds, because we have people, if you ain't monitoring your blood pressure and you're on like beta blockers and shit, all of a sudden your blood pressure goes to normal and you're taking a beta blocker, people start standing up and getting dizzy. I know that like that happened. I wasn't on blood meds, but still that happened to me because my blood pressure dropped so much. I wasn't used to it.
Absolutely. And having a low blood pressure is a very healthy thing. But if your body's used to you having a high blood pressure and you're taking 3 blood pressure medications, then you go super low carb, super quick, and your blood pressure starts to return to normal because it is going to come down with the proper human diet, and you're still taking those 3 meds, you can get in trouble. You can pass out. You can hit your head. You could, have a concussion. So I find a doctor who at least understands paleo, low carb, primal, because most docs are like, yeah, I've heard of that. And also keep in mind, you don't have to tell the doctor that you're eating keto or carnivore. Just tell them you've eliminated all the processed food from your diet. You're eating only real whole food because that's the truth, right? And so they're going to be like, oh, great. I love that. That's good. Yeah. And so now you don't have to have the keto or carnivore discussion. But at the same time, you've got a doctor who's on board. Lily, shut up. Okay. But when it comes to the labs, I don't know if you know about this, Jack, but I've actually got a book called Common Sense Labs that I wrote that goes over all the labs. Yeah. Why you want them, what the normal range should be, and also what to say to your perhaps ignorant doctor who doesn't know that you need those labs. Like the fasting insulin. Many docs will say, you don't need that. I'm not going to order that. But I've got a paragraph in here. And also the diagnosis codes that you can give your doctor and say, yes, dummy, here's why I need a fasting insulin. Here's the codes to put in to get my insurance to pay for it. That kind of stuff for some people is invaluable because their doctors never thought about this because they were trained and indoctrinated, not taught.
And the last thing that I have here before we wrap up with final thoughts is I get going to the families for the holidays and eating a piece of cake. I totally get that. You have to, though, especially as a recovering carbohydrate addict, you got to treat things like a bar room, and sometimes you just don't go, especially maybe early on when you're just adapting to this. Because it's amazing how many special events there are if you let everything be, well, it's Johnny's birthday. You have to have a piece of cake. No, you don't. No, you don't. Like, you don't have to do it every single time, because you start seeing like, well, every time there's a little league game, like you said, they pass the kids out snacks after the game, and there's this and that. And so you really, I feel, if you come out of the standard diet, you have to treat yourself like an addict, because I really believe that you are. And if you're going to let yourself have this shit every time you go anywhere somebody else is doing it, you're an alcoholic hanging out daily in a bar.
Absolutely. And this really matters for some people much more than it does for others. Some people are just thoughtlessly eating a crap diet. Some people are truly, truly carb and sugar addicts, and they have to treat this like an addiction. Not everybody does, I don't think, but some people do. And if you're one of those people, you need to look in the mirror and say, look, dude, I love you, but you're a sugar addict. You're a sugarholic. You're a carb addict. It's not okay for you to have a big piece of birthday cake at a birthday party. It's not okay. And so what I would encourage people like that to do is, first of all, be self-aware. Secondly, admit it and forgive yourself. It's okay. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. And then third is to tell everybody in your family and your circle of friends, I'm a sugar addict, dude. Just like you wouldn't offer me a vodka soda if I were an alcoholic, do not offer me cake, and cookies, and pies. Please, I'm a sugar addict. It is causing medical disease.
Yeah.
Please recognize that. And a lot of people just do the diet thing on their own. They don't think to include their family and their friends. But if you know you're a sugar addict, you got to tell the people who care about you, and then they'll actually help protect you. But you got to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend that hated cream, and he finally just started telling people he was allergic to it, even though he wasn't. Like something to keep the dealer at bay. Let's go lightning round on these questions. There's quite a few of them. I know I've kept you a long time. Tom says, will diet cause or have an effect on long QT syndrome?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so eating the wrong diet can absolutely lengthen your QT interval on your EKG. A lot of people don't realize this. Most heart specialists don't realize that your diet can have an effect on that, but it absolutely can. And for anybody with long QT syndrome, you absolutely need to be eating a proper human diet.
Okay. Diana says, I stalled on carnivore until I had added a little carb, then instantly started dropping fat. I wonder why. Yeah.
So two things could be at play here, Diana. Number one, this may have just been the jigger that you needed to throw into the mix to unstick your stall. Sometimes that's all it is. But I think there are some people who carnivore is not the best option for them. They should eat maybe low carb, maybe keto, maybe ketovore. And that's the sweet spot for you, your DNA, your biodiversity, your gut microbiome, your ancestry, all that stuff I think matters at least a little bit, maybe a lot of it in some people. But I think some people, the perfect spot on the proper human diet spectrum is keto with 50 total grams of carbs a day. Other people, it's not. And so regardless of why, I'm just glad that you're doing these N=1 experiments with yourself and you figured this out. Now, does that mean you need to stay with the carbs added forever? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know, but you're going to pay attention to how you feel, your body's feedback, and you'll be able to tweak this into the future.
So Matt says, I'm a truck driver. I'm out 3 to 4 nights at a time. Current truck has no room for a fridge. I intend to change that in 6 months. Any recommendations? I'll throw some stuff in that. Number one, cooked meat lasts for a couple days. Unless you're like throwing it in the sun, it'll be okay in an air-conditioned cab of a truck. Number two, maybe you can't fit a full-size refrigerator. You don't have a sleeper car or whatever in your truck. But I damn well know you can fit a cooler in there. So get a dadgone cooler, cook a bunch of meat up, and throw it in there. Next, if you're not ready to go full-on like grass-fed and stuff like that, every damn place that you stop with the truck to eat, you can get a burger without the bun.
Absolutely.
You go to a steakhouse, you get a steak. Would you like a potato with that? No.
Yeah.
Well, here's the bread. Please take. And you go to a restaurant where they put bread or chips on the table, immediately, please take that away.
Yep.
Don't be rude about it, but just, I can't have that. Please take that away or I'm going to eat it. Like, there are ways to do this. I've always found that to be a little bit limited. You know, there's a whole movement on Twitter and Nostr called Pocket Steak.
Yeah.
People make a steak, throw it in a Ziploc bag, shove it in their pocket. That's their lunch that day.
Absolutely. I totally agree with Jack. You got room for an igloo cooler. Fill it up with boiled eggs, bacon, and hamburger patties that you can literally put in the average size igloo cooler. You could put a week worth of food and it's going to stay fine and edible. Secondly, truck stop food. I've actually spoken at trucker conferences about the proper human diet. And invariably, they're like, you don't understand, dude, truck stop food. And I'm like, yeah, I do understand. I live on an interstate exit. We used to go to the 126 and we would eat at the truck stop for Sunday dinner. I know exactly about truck stop food. It's not the truck stop food. It's your choices at the truck stop.
Yes.
That's the difference, okay? I can go to the truck stop and I can eat 100% carnivore. Now, it's not going to be grass finished and panda massage, but I guarantee you I can eat carnivore at this truck stop right up the road. I'll eat all the hot dogs and the hamburger patties. If it comes down to it, I'll eat the pepperoni and the cheese off the top of the pizza and leave the crust. I can eat carnivore or keto at a truck stop. It's all about the choices you make and having enough wisdom to know that those choices actually matter. I've had a ton of truck drivers and other over-the-road guys who have lost a ton of weight and reverse type 2 diabetes by living on bologna and hot dogs and hamburger patties and Spam. Literally, that's what they live on. They haven't developed any vitamin or mineral deficiencies. They lost so much weight they had to buy new clothes, and they were able to stop multiple medications for type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure because they didn't need them anymore. Eating bologna, cheap hot dogs, cheap ground beef, and Spam out of the can. So don't tell me, oh, it's a truck stop. No, dude, I eat at truck stops. I know what the food is at. You got to make the right choice.
Bring me a steak and a side salad without the dressing on it. And the dressing is the juice from the steak on the salad if you're keto instead of carnivore, right? That'd be one example. Another thing you can travel with is anything, like you mentioned, Spam. So anything canned, sardines, mackerel, stuff like that. Get the stuff that's not soybean, no seed oils. The seed oil is, I want everybody listening to this from now on, when you hear seed oil, hear poison, industrial toxin. That's what it is. Go look. I had a documentary I shared over the weekend on how seed oils are made. I'll find it. I'll add it to the show notes along with a link for Ken's book on labs and Ken's book on the doctor lies. I'll add that all to the show notes. In the video below, you should see a link where the audio of this will be when we're done in a few minutes here. It'll be about 30 minutes after we're done. I'll get that up. Every resource we talked about, I'll make sure is there. Next question. Can you please tell me the best way to get my wife on a proper human diet? Man, if I knew how to tell women what to do and get them to do it, I would be doing something other. I'd be rich beyond rich.
Yeah, Jeremy, I feel like you're a little behind in the common sense department if you think you're going to be able to get your wife to do anything. You're going to lead by example, Jeremy.
There it is.
You're going to fix your own metabolic health. You're going to fix your own waistline. You're going to fix your own mental health by eating a proper human diet and living a proper human life, which is some of the things Jack got to later on down in the hierarchy. And you're going to let her see that change in you. You're going to let her see the twinkle in your eye and how flat your belly is and how things are working like they haven't worked in a few years. And she's going to not only, because number one, for some women, jealousy is a big motivator.
Yes.
And when you see some chick at the gas station come up to ask you for directions, she's going to be like, whoa, what's going on here? Where did my chubby little teddy bear go?
Yeah.
Why is this woman asking? She don't know how to use Google Maps. Why is she asking you for directions?
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know. I don't know what's going to work for you in your house, Jeremy, but I do know that if you fix your shit, she's going to be paying attention to that.
I will give you a way. It may be too late because he's already on the journey, maybe more than, I don't know how far, but in the very beginning, I'll give you a way, guys, that will make it very, and women, they'll also work the other direction. Very hard for that person to say no, assuming that you're in a loving relationship. Honey, I need to do this for me. And it would be really helpful if you would do it with me for the first month so that I'm not tempted.
Good.
And then shut the fuck up.
Yeah. That's a quote. That's doable. I like that, Jack.
That's what we used to call in sales like close. You have closed. And when you close, if you open your mouth before the person on the other side opens their mouth, you lose. You give a number in a negotiation, you shut up. You ask for something that's sincere. And don't do it gimmicky. I didn't give you a gimmick. Mean it when you say it and shut up and listen.
Yep. That's beautiful. Like, because you got a built-in time period there where she's like, well, I kind of like this guy. I'm married to him.
Yeah.
It's only 30 days. Okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
Just till I'm strong enough to watch you eat your stuff.
Yeah, that's
brilliant. Can we do that for 30 days? Can we get rid of all the poisons? And you can, on day 31, you can go get anything you want. Odds are she ain't going back or he ain't going back, whoever goes first. Yep. Because I will tell you, Dorothy and I did this together, and it is so much easier.
Oh,
it is so much easier, you know. Carolyn says, what about microbiome of the gut and high fiber?
Yep.
You know why I'm laughing. This is important for health. So for many, say it's essential. I totally agree. The microbiome of your stomach and your intestines is incredibly important. I just don't think fiber has jack crap to do with it.
No, Carolyn, I can tell you from firsthand experience, I have sent off my own stool samples, and I have looked at the stool sample results from hundreds of people who are eating a carnivore diet, which means zero fiber, and have been eating a carnivore diet in some cases for 10 to 20 years, have not had 1 gram of fiber in over a decade. Okay. And I'm taking the time to answer this because a lot of people totally believe that fiber is essential. They totally believe you'll get colon cancer within a week or two if you don't eat fiber, right? It's not true. The gut microbiome diversity, the biodiversity of a carnivore's gut microbiome is more diverse than someone who's eating the standard American diet. Okay. It actually becomes more diverse. And there's a lot about the gut microbiome that we don't know yet. A lot of people act like we know a lot about it. If anybody says, oh, send me a poop sample and I'll tell you exactly what to eat, they're full of shit.
No, and I'll tell you,
nowhere near being able to do that yet. That's 20 years from now. Maybe we'll be able to do that, but not now. You don't need fiber for a healthy gut. You don't need fiber for a healthy gut microbiome. It's a myth. It's a lie.
First thing, if you have problems with your colon, the first thing I do is cut the fiber out of it because it works your colon so hard. So think about that. Yep. I'll also say another thing. We've done experiments, and this has been done on humans. It's been done on mice. It's been done on soil microbiomes. Like it's everywhere the world is. If you destroy the microbiome, the only way to fix it is to reintroduce the microbes. Changing the nutrient supply won't reintroduce it. So, for instance, in my research on soil science, Dr. Stephen Johnson, who created the bioreactors that I teach now, looked at mice where they took and they destroyed the microbiome in the mice by changing they did it through diet and multi-generations. When they put the diet back to where it should be for a mouse, the microbiome never came back. That's why we have these fecal matter transport plants for people that have completely nuked their biome. So you're not getting a diverse microbiome in your stomach and in your intestines because you eat fiber. That's not how that happens. You literally receive your microbiome from your parents. And that's where I think we're getting into some really dangerous territory. We don't even know the results until like my grandkids are my age. Then we're going to know how much damage we've done.
Oh, 100%. And I think Jack's implication is exactly right. I think that there's generational damage done by eating the standard American diet, not epigenetic damage and microbiome damage. I think as more research, actual meaningful, useful research is done about this, we're going to see that for some people, it's going to take 2 generations to get back to that ideal human bioform and mental and physical health. Everybody can improve their health to a certain degree by eating a proper human diet, 100%. But I think in order to get back to the tall, lean, just effortlessly healthy, I think the big food companies have done generational damage to the human species. I think that's exactly right. And I think eventually there will be huge billion-dollar lawsuits over that. but we don't have the research yet to be able to prove that. And so, yeah, we'll see what time brings.
Next one is a totally open question that I think has no detail with it to help us answer it.
No, I can answer this question.
Okay, why am I losing my hair? From Lisa.
Yeah, so Lisa, I actually have a YouTube video about hair loss with keto or carnivore. Anytime a human being, you've put them on any kind of diet that's making them lose weight, it could just be starvation. I locked you in my barn, you're going to lose hair because hair is a non-essential thing. You don't need the hair on your head in order to not die. Okay. And so when you're losing weight, your body has no idea whether you're eating a proper human diet or whether you're in a starvation situation or whether you've fallen down a bluff and broke your femur and you're stuck at the bottom of that bluff and your tribe has left you. Your body doesn't know what's going on. All it knows is it's not getting enough protein, not getting enough total nutrition. And so it's going to start cutting off non-needed things. And hair growth is one of those. When a woman has a baby, also there's hormonal changes. You have a baby, you're going to lose hair. End of story. Doesn't matter. You go on a diet of any kind, Weight Watchers, calorie restriction, keto, carnivore, and you're losing weight quickly, your body's going to turn off your hair. You're going to start losing hair 100% of the time. If I put you in a stressful enough situation, sleep deprivation, and I'm coming at you 24/7 and won't let you sleep, you're going to lose hair 100%. The human body has hard fail-safe set in to protect its core mechanism, and one of those is if times get really tough, you're gonna lose your hair. Your body doesn't give a shit if you've got a long, beautiful mane of hair or not. It doesn't care. It's just trying to keep you from dying. And so when anybody goes keto, ketovore, carnivore, as if they're losing a lot of weight, they're going to lose hair. But what we hear invariably from especially the keto, ketovore, carnivore community is if you keep it up, at some point your hair is going to start to grow back more beautiful and luxurious than it's been in years in many cases, because now you're eating a nutrient-dense diet that's giving your body everything it needs to make luxurious hair. And you're eating enough because you're eating until satiety. So your body knows, oh, there's no famine. Everything's great. And so I'm gonna start growing some beautiful hair because reproduction's back on the table, because I'm not worried about starvation or end of life, because I'm getting this healthy animal fat and protein, which is the ultimate marker, the ultimate signal to your body that, hey, everything's great. Look at all this animal fat and protein we're getting. So then the hair's going to come back.
So that made me think about skin too. This seems a little unrelated, but it made me think of it. So I'll throw it out here for people that might be on this journey. I don't even know what my heaviest weight was. I was too embarrassed to weigh myself. I do know that I hit 290 for sure, and I was probably over 300. I'm 210 sitting here right now, and 5'11", and I am beyond fit according to the government statistics with measurements and all now. Now, you'd think a dude that lost 80 pounds or more would have hanging skin. And so when I started seeing the weight come off quick, I'm like, I need to do something to head this shit off. And I did some research on it. And what I ended up doing, I bought a really heavy bristled brush. And before I would shower, I would dry butt brush all my skin, especially around the places I was carrying the most weight. And I have had no need of skin removal surgery. And I really think that there are some things you need to think about when you start thinking about shedding 80, 100 pounds of weight.
Yep.
Like your body needs to adapt. Hair loss is one, because it didn't happen to me, so I didn't think about it. But
yeah, definitely. And I love your dry brushing idea. A lot of people after they shower, just using a dry towel and just scrub very vigorously, that can stimulate this. But then also oh no, this is not for D. This is just the redundant skin.
Yeah.
The autophagy from the fasting, that's going to help tighten up loose skin. And so any of you guys, if you've got over 50 pounds, 100, 150, 200 pounds to lose, I love Jack's dry brushing idea. That makes perfect sense to me. That's stimulating. And then daily 18-hour fast.
Yeah.
To ramp up that autophagy. I've actually, Jack, I've seen guys, you know how some people, they're more severely obese, 250 pounds. They lose the weight. They've lost the weight, but you can tell that they used to be severely overweight.
Yeah.
I've actually seen people that lost all of their weight with keto, ketovore, carnivore, that until they told me and showed me a before picture, me as a trained physician, because I'm just look at human bodies. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I would have bet you $100 that they had never been over 20 pounds more than what I saw them at. They had none of that stigma of being previously overweight like you see with some people, because they did it with the fasting and with carnivore or ketovore. It's like the skin just knows what to do in that situation. Now, it doesn't happen for 100% of people, but I've seen people like I would have bet $100 they were never overweight, and they've lost 200 pounds on a proper human diet along with good fasting.
Dee's question, how long does it take eating meat and eggs only? Does it take to lower insulin levels to healthy level? What else can I do to lower it faster? I think part of that is how bad have you done damage in the first place? If your pancreas is churning out insulin like crazy and you have an insulin resistance problem, you can start to see things move pretty quick. If you start where it's starting to poop out, you're heading for type 1 diabetes. So how bad is the damage would be one thing I'd say.
Yeah, the biochemical, physiological changes are going to start the first day, D. Now, the visible results are going to, depending on which result you're talking about, are going to be weeks to months into the future. But many people, their mental health, they can tell a difference in days. Their body measurements, they can tell a difference in days. If you start checking your fasting insulin, you check it before and then you check it a week later, it's going to be noticeably, substantially better after a week of keto or carnivore. Okay. But if you're eating meat and eggs only and you're fasting 18 hours a day, it's not going to take many weeks before not only you can notice, but your next door neighbor and people that see you at church on Sunday are going to be like, D, what are you doing? You look different. You've changed your hair or something. I mean, it's very quickly apparent, especially if you go full bore carnivore with 18-hour fast. It doesn't take long at all before the guy next door is going to be asking you questions.
There was a time as I started to lose weight, people always noticed the weight loss.
Yeah.
But it really quickly changed to you look younger.
Exactly.
It really quickly changed to that. It was probably a good 120 days in, not just in person too. Even people like I did a whole YouTube series when I was going through this. And I think one of my best moments in it, I picked up a 35-pound barbell plate and said, today, this is how much weight I've lost. And I didn't do it for me. I did it for people watching to get them motivated. And I dropped it.
Yeah.
And people said, I didn't realize how much weight you lost, but you look like you're 10 years younger.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do one more question, Jack.
All right, and then we'll let you go because I know you're busy. Elk River Off-Road says, I've read about the health benefits of almonds, cashews, and pistachios. What are Ken's thoughts?
Yeah, all that's total horseshit, Elk River. Okay? There's no magic phytochemicals, phytonutrients. There's nothing magical in any nuts. If an almond or a cashew or a pistachio has been roasted thoroughly enough to decrease the anti-nutrient compounds, then the carbohydrate count is okay for nuts. And so remember, there's two things. There's the carb count, total carbs, and then there's how inflammatory is this to your body. And so if you want to know just how inflammatory something is, eat a bunch of raw cashews. If you want to know how inflammatory nuts are. I think all the nuts and seeds, if you're going to eat them at all, they should be soaked, they should be sprouted, they should be roasted, or some combination of all three of those. Then you've removed the inflammatory part and you're left with just total carb count, which for some nuts are not that bad. They can be a part of a keto diet, but I used to think raw almonds, man, that's a health food. No. Please don't eat any nuts raw, including peanuts, which are not really a nut, but a lot of people in the South think they're actual nuts, and they ain't.
They're legumes.
Okay? They're legumes. You got to roast the hell out of peanuts before you can safely eat them, or they will cause inflammation in your body.
And I'll just add on the nut thing, like it's real easy to go over your carb count if you're not measuring. They're easy to eat a lot of. They are a nutritional bomb. They're designed to be that. That's what they are, the storage of every bit of energy that tree takes in through its annual cycle is dedicated to making that acorn or that nut so that it can make a new tree.
Yep.
And if you've ever planted a tree from a seed, the rapidity of growth in the first year or two will tell you how much energy is embodied in that little nut. So definitely be careful with that. I know you need to go. I'm going to let you go. There's a bunch more questions. I'm going to hang and do my best. And thank you for being with us today, Ken.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Thanks, everybody, for watching. If Jack answers your question, there's a 99.9% chance that I agree with Jack's answer.
All right. Thank you, Ken. And we'll just keep rolling here. And like I said, I'm not Ken. I'm not a doctor, but I've been doing this a long time. I'll do my best. Is coconut oil the equivalent of a seed oil from Obi Bob Kenobi? To me, no. Ken may give a different answer with this. It is not really a seed oil. It is a fat. I would put it, if we take and say, what should we be eating from the standpoint of dietary fats? Animal fats are all good. Then when we get into like less bad vegetative sources of fat, my two that I'm totally okay with are avocado oil and olive oil. Good quality of both. I would put something like coconut oil right in that crossover to where we go into the stuff I wouldn't eat. So I will not eat it. I think the MCTs, the medium chain triglycerides in coconut oil are great. There's been research done to show that it actually moderates symptoms of Alzheimer's, but I would not make it my primary dietary fat. That's the nicest I can be in my assessment of that. JH says, diagnosed with fatty cirrhosis in 2004, went on keto in August 2019, lost from 245 to 200 by March 2020, maintained 205 for 6 months. I've been going back slowly since. What can I do? First, tighten up and make sure that you're still following the regime that got you where you wanted to be. Because a lot of times over time, we start to wane off of this and we start letting ourselves have things and we stop being rigorous in counting carbohydrates. So make sure you're in the right place. And next, I would say probably consult with an enlightened doctor. Maybe take that question to Ken. I'm not a doctor. And so, hey, Alabama K-Bong says, I don't like sardines, so I mix them with salmon and I can eat them that way. I'll throw another little tip on stuff like that. Liver is one of the best things that you can be consuming. And I did this years ago, and I think Ken's actually picked it up and started recommending it. I'll get liver and I'll cut it up in cubes and I'll freeze it. And I'll put that through the grinder frozen. Do not put liver in your grinder without freezing it first. You want a good quality grinder to do this or it'll make mush. And then I package that in basically 1 ounce packages. Anytime we're going to do ground meat, whatever, if I didn't get a chance to pre-mix it, I pull out a pound of ground meat and I pull out an ounce of liver. Mix that together. You know, whatever you're going to do with ground beef, you'll never know it's there. It'll actually enhance the flavor. So that's just a little add I wanted to give you there. Next, Finn Bear says, I just measured my blood pressure, 131/91. How bad is that? I'm going to say it's not that bad. Most doctors will start wanting to put you on a medication for it. Adjust your diet, pay attention to it, and a couple of things. One, an individual blood pressure reading means absolutely nothing, especially when you're thinking about it. So it's a good idea to, like, when you check your blood pressure, throw something down that you find interesting and read it while you get your blood pressure taken. That's what your blood pressure is like on a normal basis. The other thing is beware of something called white coat hypertension. When I go into the doctor, which is rare, and they take my blood pressure, it's always about 10 to 15 points higher than it is when I take it at home. There are people that we just react to that clinical environment. I know Ken's talked about that as well. So keep an eye on it. Blood pressure is a concern, but don't get nuts over it. Do you have any concerns about the high dioxins in meat? My answer to that is absolutely not. I do not. I'm not worried about eating meat at all. My life got better when I started eating all meat. Jason says, my wife's type 2. Recently, she found out she's allergic to beef and pork. Can the allergy be remediated? Usually people that end up allergic to meat, it is due to a bite by a tick, and it does go away in time. If there's another reason for it, I'm not really sure. Just finding out, and I know you, Jason, you've been to my place a few times. I'm assuming your wife's about your age. If you're just finding out about an allergy now, I question whether it's actually an allergy or it's an allergy to something in the meat, though I know you're doing a lot of pasture-raised animals yourself. So you're probably eating pretty clean meat. So I'm not sure about that. But there is definitely an illness that's caused by ticks that causes an allergy, usually specifically to red meat. and that is almost always self-correcting within 6 months to 18 months of time. Deborah Johnson said, don't get me started on how difficult it is to get requested blood tests via versus standard blood testing. There's a way to do that, and that is, for my health doctor, I would like these tests. This is from Ken, by the way. And when they say, well, I don't think you need them or whatever, well, then I would like you to put down in my permanent medical record that I requested these tests and you said that I didn't need them. You know what your doctor's going to do? 99% of the time, they're going to go ahead and order the tests so you can have them done. And you can go to LabCorp or something like that, save a lot of money, pay cash is the way I do with blood tests, with things like that. Because you know who reads medical records? Lawyers. Lawyers read medical records. So when you phrase it that way, you're probably going to get what you're asking for. And Chartreuse says, even black walnuts need roasting? Yes, it's a nut. It should be roasted. That's what I'm going to tell you. That would be my advice on any and all nuts, is to go ahead and roast them. With that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's show. Like I said, I didn't really plan on having Ken on. I just basically hit him up and asked him for a list of labs and said, I said, hey, wait a minute, would you like to come do this with me? He said, yeah. So we had Ken here for almost 2 hours. That's pretty badass. Heading into the last week of the year for new podcasts. Next week will be all rewinds, but we do have regularly scheduled programming right up till Thursday this week when we will run the Survival Podcast Christmas special. If you are new to TSP because you came here because of Ken and you're still around, thank you for still being here. Please check out the Survival Podcast. We do talk about subjects like this on occasion, but we talk about lifestyle design as a whole. If you like what you heard today, if you want to raise your own meat, grow your own food, you want to know how to be better prepared, you want to know how to build a business, you want to know how to navigate the economic times we're in, come check us out. We're really good at this. Been doing it 15 and a half years now. 2-time podcast of the year award winner and over 3,400 episodes. So come check us out. I think you'll enjoy it. And real quick here, I want to remind you again, for those of you that are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area specifically, I am running a composting class very, very soon here. We're going to be doing this at my farm. It's right now tentatively for January 6th or 7th. Sometimes when I do these small half-day classes, people drive in from pretty far out. I'm going to suggest you don't plan on doing that unless you can do it. Like wake up that morning and be here that day, because we need some flexibility in this. I need to get this done for the online class I'm about to release. I want to add this as a bonus to it. I think it will make things a lot better. That's why I'm asking people to come. Anybody that comes to the class, and we're limiting it to 10 students, can come hang out here for half a day. We're going to have great food. It will be highly keto carnivore. I promise you that. And we'll have a great time, and we're going to build a bioreactor with all my latest innovations to it. And you'll also get the online course for free. But we can have a really great, beautiful day, or we can have a really crappy day in January. The further out we go, I have to have my guy come video it. He's not available for the next 2 weekends. That puts us at the end of the month. So check it out. Please consider coming. I'd really appreciate it if you did. And then my one of the ways I monetize this show is I recommend products and services through Amazon, and I do reviews on them. And I don't own this book. It's one of the actually I do. I got it on Kindle just so I could talk about it intelligently. Artisan bread in 5 minutes a day. If you want to make your own bread, this is a good way to do it. And you're going to find you're going to eat a lot of less bread if you have to make it yourself. When you control what goes in it, you can avoid things like seed oils, like high fructose corn syrup. Go look at that loaf of bread that you buy and feed to your kid and think it's healthy that says all natural, whole grain, blah, 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 whatever on it. It probably has as the second or third ingredient high fructose corn syrup, right after bleached wheat. Definitely check this out if you're going to be eating breads in spite of everything that Ken and I said today. And I think you will find that you will have a better experience, even though it's not the best choice for you. Last but not least, consider becoming a member of my membership program. If you do that, you get discounts that more than pay for it. And tomorrow I'll catch you with a totally new and totally different episode. Again, if you were here from the Ken Berry crowd, thank you for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Give us a chance. You might learn a lot. Ken, I'll put it this way. I showed you pictures of me when I was fat. Ken used to be fat too. And when Ken was a fat doctor telling lies to his patients, which that's his own words, not mine, he was driving around listening to this show. That's how far back we go together. If Ken likes it and you're a Ken fan, you might like it too. Check it out, guys. And everyone else, I will catch you tomorrow with another live stream.